Yes, it's for my so that I can what is it? Do a preset because you can't do presets on the phone. There's no option to show what you're looking on the phone.
Is
You
that your
can just do
computer,
it
the second
for
device?
yes, that's me. I just need to unmute
Bush
this mic.
Whisperers not going live on what? On there we go. Not going live on one of the devices. Interesting. Okay, so let's roll with it. Hello and welcome to those of you that are here. By the way, Pope on Dope, your computer, your second device isn't connected. So what you
Okay.
got to do is you got to go on and you got to connect with a mic, and then you got to mute the mic out on your side, yeah, for your second device. Does that make sense? That'll be your computer because it shows your device not connected. They will
Yeah,
need
it
to
makes
connect their mic before you can add them to the platform. And once your mic is connected, then you just mute the mic out on the second device, and then you can use that as your speaker system. And then your phone you can just talk into. Well, welcome to everybody else. Sending you all big love, Mexico. Welcome, dear Mexico. Seems like forever since I saw you. Mexico was here just a little while ago. She brought Joshua a pirate chest, the biggest chest. She said it was a big chest. I had no idea how big that chest was. It was massive. Like you can put you can put a body in that chest, a flesh puppet. Got to be careful what I say. So, without any further ado, let's get cranking. We've got an interesting discussion today. We're not going to be too long. We're going to be within the 4-hour mark today, maybe even 3 to 4 hours. And let's see how the day gets ahead of us. We've all got engagements, and I've got a limited energy supply to maintain as well. It's been a big day. So we are with Pope on Dope and Cosmic, and Indy's going to be getting here in a little while. I'm going to check my phone in a minute, but I'll start introducing Pope on Dope and Cosmic in the order that they got here. Pope on Dope is a lovely brother. He hasn't been with us for the last few weeks. He's been quite busy with work and organizing his life. As life can be so busy, it can take a lot out of us. But he's here with us today. He's a specialist of researching the Earth grid, looking at the way in which sacred structures and historical structures have been erected, where they've been erected, the building style, the patterns of erection. And so he's been spending a lot of time studying how the ley line energies of the Earth move, because as we know, the ancients used to build their structures on the ley line. So this is a forte of his, a speciality. He's also a lovely brother. He's very much engaged in studying the ancient world and looking at the architecture, the specifics, and the geometry of the architecture. So we're going to have a field day here. We've also got with us Cosmic Prankster, another fascinating character. He's been with us for a long time, since the onset of the show, since I think a few of the episodes in, and he works with the Fae. He channels the Fae, so he has this personal relationship with them where they've been teaching him about the nature of cosmology, the world we live in, the structure of the world, and how things are put together, as well as an entire system of magic which comes along with it, which is an evolving system. And so he spends a lot of time with the Fae, and they have taught him a lot about how energy structures work, which is essentially what we're going to be looking at here, the structures of energy and the way that they move through. So I'd love to give you each a chance to just say a few words about yourself. If we could start. Pope and Dope.
Oh, hi. I hope everyone can hear me. Thanks for letting me join on the show again today. Basically, as you said, I look at all the buildings that are scattered around on the earth, and I try and show a more physical form of how we are being lied to by everybody else, by what's there. Um, some of the structures are all the same across the world, but a lot of them have been torn down, or they had certain events that they had happened just for them to basically tear them down, because they say no, they weren't there for, they were just there for the event, like the massive fairs and so on. Um, but today, basically, gonna have a look at some of the structures that are part of old cultures and so on. What do you think we must maybe do something with Sumer, or what do you think?
Hey, it's Cosmic Prankster here. I don't really have too much to say in terms regards to an introduction. I always never really know what to say, but yeah, like I work with the Fae and learning a lot about like the idea of like certain sort of interdimensional bubbles and how they kind of all stack on top of each other, and there's sort of like the idea of like reflection and sort of the two worlds. So this will be an interesting subject.
Well, lovely. Thank you. And Pope on Dope, your computer isn't coming through because it could be to do if you're using Firefox or any other search engine that's going to make issues. You got to use the Chrome, by the way.
I'm
And
busy checking.
lovely
I
Mexico
checked
to
on
have you
the.
with us. So you got to
I'm
just check
checking.
your audio settings are on when you enter in with your
They
computer
both.
so you can throw some
They
pictures
both
at
are
us.
on. I'll get to
Yeah, let's get cranking into it. We're going to be discussing the ley lines, the sacred structures on the ley lines, and other earth mysteries as they relate to the phenomenon of energy and resonance through the earth crust. And I think this is a topic that we're all aware of. And it's been sort of presented with a bit of foo-foo. I use the word foo-foo as if like it's been presented by airy fairy people very often that are not grounded in their philosophy and not grounded in their cosmological knowledge. And so they come out with these crazy sounding descriptions of what ley line energy is and how it works. And it makes it sound crazy supernatural. And so people think, oh gosh, this is a bit much, when actually it's just a normal part of our day to day. There's nothing supernatural about ley lines. It's the way plants grow. It's the way different kinds of forms of life thrive on Earth. So to begin with, probably be a good idea to look at the Ida and the Pingala. Let me find an image while I'm talking. Because the Ida and the Pingala will give us an insight into exactly what it is that we're talking about here. And it's very easy to understand if one puts it into perspective. This is probably an image that we've all seen from time to time. We're all very much aware of the Ida and the Pingala. And it will give us an insight into the nature of electromagnetism and the way in which it works. Stop camera. Huh? What is that? Present. Aha, there we go. Has somebody else arrived? Oh wow, Pope and Dope got a working image. Lovely. So that's good to know. I just want to bring one other image just before we go, just so we can get a little bit of a background into just exactly what it is, what ley line energy is, so that we got an idea and a knowledge of. Oh no, sorry. You were open in two instances, and I tried to close down the one Pope and Dope. If you would open your laptop again, exactly as you did before. It's just I had you
no
on
problem.
in two instances, and I wanted to clean it up and take one out so I didn't get confused with the screen. So if you could just open your laptop on again. Sorry about that. So basically what we're looking at here is quite simple. Share screen. The Ida and the Pingala is essentially a notion that needs to be understood in order to understand the cosmology of the yoga energy. And this will give us an insight when we're looking at the way in which energy flows. And I think I've got an image that should be coming up here. There we go. Now it's a simple image. You've all seen it. You've got the left, you've got the right channel in the body. The Ida is the left channel related to the emotions, the magnetism, the hormones. The Pingala is a right channel related to the thinking principles, the pineal gland, and the electrical central nervous system, the resonant field of this. And so what we've got here oh, Pope, you're going to have to do it again. I don't know why it does that. So one, it's weird. I'll have to leave them both on so that we don't have a complication. Very strange. So yeah, back to that image that I was showing you just a minute ago. Basically, the idea is the Ida and the Pingala are the left and the right channel, and they relate to the magnetic and the electrical principles. And effectively, we can also equate this to acidity and alkalinity. Very important to understand. The acidity and the alkalinity. For example, as we know, batteries, alkalinity, electrical charge, right? And then we've also got the magnetic qualities, which relate to, I would say, a more acidic element. And so these two work together in a polarity and a balance, and they wrap around each other. You could equate it to the creative principle and the principle of destructive principle. So it's what we see in the universe, you know. Things are being created and being formed, and things are being broken down and turned into smaller bits. And so there's this continuity of life that flows through the Ida and the Pingala principle. Now, when we're looking at the Earth's crust, the Ida and the Pingala principle is exactly the same as it is on that image that I've shown you there with the chakras, as it is flowing from one polarity to the other, to the other, to the other. And on the Earth crust, we have these two polarities, and you can equate them to the positive and negative charges of the hydrogen ions, effectively. And so these positive and hydrogen charges of the ions and the negative charges relate to different scales of life, different forms of life. Now, we obviously thrive on a negative hydrogen ion presence because it brings to us a more alkaline state. And the more alkaline states, for example, the more alkaline the foods we eat, the better, because our body tends to generate enough acidity as it goes on. So we actually want the alkalinity to bring us to a point of balance so that we have a balanced acidity and alkalinity, because acidity is anaerobic. So anaerobic life forms thrive on positive hydrogen ions. Aerobic life forms thrive on negative hydrogen ions. And so this is how you measure to find out whether something is acidic or basic, is by measuring the count of the positive or negative hydrogen ions. And so there's this energy field on the Earth that is oscillating from positive hydrogen ion to negative hydrogen ion to positive hydrogen ion. Where I'm sitting in my home, there are a number of points where there's a high negative hydrogen ion count and other points where there's positive high hydrogen ion counts. They can be 3 feet, 1 meter to 4 or 5 meters, 15 feet even, maybe even 20 feet apart, these bands. They can be even bigger bands, depends on where you are. And it has to do with the oscillation of the Earth grid's electromagnetic field, which is a reflection of the pranic field of the energy life force principle flowing through all things. And this is what is coming out of the sun. And the sun is polarizing these principles in all things that it touches. And so it's based upon minerals in the earth, water flow in the earth, directional flow of water, because water is diamagnetic. So it creates this effect upon this electromagnetic field. And obviously certain gems in the earth are going to affect it, minerals in the earth, presence of gold, silver, various different elements in the earth, various different chemicals within the earth are also going to have an effect on whether this is a positive or a negative hydrogen ion rich field. And these fields obviously attract different life forms. Like ants, for example, they will not thrive in a place where there's negative rich hydrogen ions, because ants have to farm mold. Ants farm mold. It's what they eat. It's how they survive. So they need an area where anaerobic things can grow in order to grow their food. Ants are attracted to anaerobic spaces. So if there's a place in your house where you're getting ants that are repeatedly coming to that point in your home, it means that there is a rich presence of anaerobic vibrations, which is the positive hydrogen ions, and all that indicates. We're using the positive and negative hydrogen ions as an indicator of a field presence. It's not just to do with the positive and the negative hydrogen ions, but these are predominantly noticeable, which is why we measure alkalinity and acidity by these two principles. So we're talking about acidity, alkalinity on one hand as well, very important, because these are affected. This has got to do with the ion presence in the outer valencies of certain atomic fields. And all things are atomic fields of vibrations and resonance. So this is what this earth grid is of energy, and it moves in small gradations of changes between these frequencies, and then these small gradations fit into a bigger system of fields in the same way that you can have a small hand of seconds moving around a clock that fits into a cycle of minutes, that fits into a cycle of hours. And in the same way these gearing ratios work, there are bigger fields which are predominantly one field or another, which is rather interesting. Like, for example, deserts aren't deserts by accident. They are deserts because of the general field of energy. Think about it. And rich, abundant rainforests aren't just rich, abundant rainforests, not for nothing, because there's a balance of certain kinds of presence of energetic state that causes those plants to want to just grow like crazy. So there's my little introduction just into what the differences are between the positive and negative side of the field, why Feng Shui works because of your home aligning these different field structures. And I thought I'd open it up to you guys. Do any of you guys have anything you want to add or throw onto the table while we're getting into the flow?
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, I think that it's something that hasn't really been discussed much, but we intuitively know it. Let me give you an example. When you move into a house, there's certain places where you want to sit in that house. And there will be certain places where you don't feel comfortable, right? And this is very interesting. There are certain places where you want to go to the toilet. For example, I used to live in the jungles, and I used to find the anthills to go to the toilet on. You say, well, why do you want to use a toilet as an anthill as a toilet? Well, it's very practical. It's got a whole series of networks in there. You just got to get the right shaped stick with a little knob on the end, and you knock out all of the holes down and create a tube that goes into the ground. And you do your business into that tube. And deeper down, there's a whole network that takes it down. But it's not just about the tubes. You'll notice that there's no smell. There's not as much smell when you do your number twos in an anthill. Why is that? Because the frequencies of anaerobic life in that place are high, so that your fecal matter gets transformed rather quickly. There are lots of things in there that want to eat it and turn it into actual minerals and elements and fertilizer that can get taken up by the mold. And the mold that is rich in this area will transfer through the networks of mold to the places where there is a positive field of energetic resonance, so that can be made available for the plants. And you'll also find, this is another interesting point, if you've got a vegetable garden in your property, there's some places where that property with a vegetable garden just will not thrive. And it doesn't matter what you do to the garden, you cannot make it thrive. But there are other places where it will thrive. The key is, when you're looking for a place to put a vegetable garden, don't just put it where you think you want it. Put it where it needs to go. And that vegetable garden will thrive, because the anaerobic life forms will not be attracted there. The mold, the fungi that are destructive, that are anaerobic, won't actually find a foothold there. And the positive aerobic life forms and the plants and the microbes that you're growing will actually thrive incredibly. What have we got here, dear Pope?
I'm busy looking at the land of Sumer at the moment. I'm trying to see if there aren't any old historical buildings that are still left after the war. Geez, they blew up a lot over there. I think most of this year is also gone.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Have you got your volume running through your phone or your computer?
On my phone.
Is it possible to run your volume through your computer?
I can't. That's where it blocks me. I don't know why. The only way I can share something on my computer now is if I present it. then it allows me to do something on this chat. And I've tried on
But
Google.
if you look on the
tried
screen of your computer, isn't there a little panel on the bottom where it says mute? Stop
Yes,
screen and
there
all of
is.
that? So if you turn
There's
up
a
the
few of
volume, don't you have volume buttons on the top of your computer that you can just turn up the volume?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so
And if you do, will you hear my voice coming through your computer?
yeah,
So if you
I can
turn
hear
up
it.
the volume on your computer and then turn down the volume on your phone so that your phone volume is completely zero, then you'll be able to talk closer to your phone and you won't get any feedback. Does that make sense?
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because then the speaker of your phone won't disturb the mic of your phone, and then your phone will become just a speaker. And then your volume will come out through your computer, which is a little bit further away than your phone, and it won't actually disturb your voice. I'm guessing, I'm hoping, depending on the frequencies. But this is what I'm surmised, because I've got two speakers that I externalize my volume with, and I put them just a little distance away from me, and I've got the mic here and the speakers facing that way, and it seems to work quite well. Because your voice was sounding very soft, and I'm wondering whether it's being filtered that way because of the background noise of the speakers on your phone, if that makes sense. This StreamYard has got a sensitive way of dealing with that.
That's not working.
I understand. Maybe I'm wrong. If you just keep doing it the way you were, it's fine. If you just try and keep the volume as low as possible on your phone so you can just hear it, you'll find that you'll get the best speaker quality. But yeah, I think as well, when it comes to this Ley-Lines story, there's a lot to be considering here. Like here where I am in Cape Town, there's some very powerful ley lines. And it seems like the most powerful convergence of ley lines is in Newlands in Cape Town, where I am. I mean, on top of the mountain, there's some very special places too, along the mountain side. But where there is a place called Newlands, there's a place called Rhodes Memorial, where there's such a powerful convergence of energy around that part of the mountain. And if you go there, you'll notice it. You'll feel it, literally feel it. You can actually feel where there's powerful energies. What do you say, Cosmic? How do you feel when there's, you know what I'm talking about, yeah?
In regards to places with energy, or?
Yeah. Places where you become more, are there not certain places where you tend to channel more than other places?
It's difficult to say, but it's kind of a see, the way when it comes to like when locations, the way it works is that in my system, the idea is that there's sort of these two realms. There's sort of direct mirror reflections of each other. There's the more, the StarFX interior, which is the more physical side, and you got the indeterminate zone, which is the more astral side. So the idea is when you want a location that has some kind of special energy occurrence, is that there's sort of like the least, disparity. So basically what a magical location would be in the context of what I'm working with is something that links that that astral area into the physical world. There's this symbol that represents that. It's like a kind of like a horseshoe, and it's like a bridge between those two things. So basically, the idea is that if you have something that has an energetic flow, there's a kind of, it's like you're taking something from both sides and kind of connecting them together. Whereas a location isn't magical. There's like there's a much greater distinction between the two. That's how I look at it.
I like that you mentioned the word bridge, because it's really such a beautiful symbol of what we're looking at here, a bridge, essentially. And that's exactly what these ley line points are. In fact, that's what they were called. The stone circles in England, for example, Stonehenge has been moved. But if you go to Avebury, Avebury is exactly where it used to be. And there's lots of smaller places. There's a particular stone circle I used to enjoy in close to Moreton on the Marsh in the Cotswolds, for example, where I loved in the UK. And whenever I went through England, I used to try and go to the Rollright Stones. Not a particularly big stone circle, but a very powerful stone circle. There's a King's Rock there, where there was sacred things, rituals done by the kings of that area. And generally speaking, that is a big telltale point of where there's a bridge between the divine spiritual kingdoms and the physical manifestational world that we live in. And these areas where this bridge is strongest, or where there's a positive bridge, has got to do with these positive ionic charges, because the positive ionic charges means it's a bridge for life force, so the living principles can flow more easily through this bridge. And because it's also a bridge that's flowing in the correct direction, if that makes sense. And so you'll find that a lot of the places that have been in ancient times celebrated, and I'm sure you can think of places where you live as well, Cosmic. For example, like, yeah, this Rhodes Memorial. Now, Rhodes was a pretty big shot in Africa, right? Cecil John Rhodes. The fact that there's a memorial put to Rhodes in that particular point says a lot, because those people in the ancient times knew more than what they were letting on. They understood these occult principles, and they were aware of the fact that there was a special energetic resonant field presence where there was a bridge of sorts energetically, so that by putting a memorial there, they could anchor the energies of the bridge and create a sort of a point where one can go to focus those energies so that they could control those energies. And you'll find that there are these memorials all around on very important points. Let me give you an example. Go to Charing Cross. Go to Leicester Square. Why did they go all the way to Egypt to fetch that long phallic rock to put at that point near to Leicester Square in order to have that sundial effect there on that point? If you do go there, you will find that the energies are powerful, very, very powerful. Charing Cross, also very powerful ley line energy, connecting it to Oxford Circus. Why was there a circus at Oxford? Because it was a place where people used to want to gather to celebrate, you see? So Oxford Circus, Charing Cross, and Leicester Square make a triangle. I'm just using London as an example for those of you that are in London. And you can find this in the same. I mean, look at a picture of what you would call it, the state in America, where not Boston. What's wrong with my brain? Maybe you can help me, Cosmic. Where the presidents and all the politicians of central Langley. Where's Langley? Do you know, Cosmic?
I don't think I do.
Well, what's the place where all the decisions are made?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. I can't believe I couldn't think of it. Like DC Comics?
I don't know if there's a relation between that D.C. and Washington, D.C., honestly. Might mean something different. I don't know.
Because you see the way they've built the sacred geometry into the earth there, right? We've seen it on videos, and we've seen it. I mean, it's spectacular bits of design, right? But they've really encaptured the astronomical principles, the way they've laid it in. Let's see if I can get an aerial photograph of Washington, D.C. And just to give you aerial photo, gosh. Maybe I'll be able to find a decent picture here, and one that can give like a fairly good idea. Images. Yeah, you'll notice that it's so powerfully. Wow, look at this one. I mean, wow, you just start looking at it. It's mind-blowing. Just the nature of the way in which, yeah, you're starting to get some. If we can get an aerial picture of that, you'd probably find better pictures than I'll find. But it's just incredible just how much there has been. Have you got a zoom? Or actually, I think I found one here. I'll just put it on for a second. Present, just to give an idea of the scale of this, the design of what they've done here. It does seem to me that there's definitely something that these forefathers knew, and they didn't name it after Washington for nothing. You know, once again, an important point. Like, just look at the way they've structured the energetic point here. This is like a chakra point, and you can see the way they've got the water, right? And the water's flowing to the next chakra point. And even from this vantage of this particular image, you can see here that there's something sacred geometry happening in the way that they've designed this. And even just looking at it, I can get the feel of the flow of energy from this photo, that there's definitely an energetic flow happening, and they are utilizing this to run their country. And, you know, there's this powerful, very powerful reaction that they are channeling in order to give their political sphere more power. So they are using a form of magic that is relying upon the ley line energies. And it's very powerful. And you can see, like, even if I show you another image, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, that there's this incredible stop screen. Okay. Presents. There's this incredible sense of energy that they are channeling here that just seems to me to be, and it's not a coincidence either, you know, the way in which they've managed to encapsulate, to get the sense of this energy in such a natural way. I seem to have lost my picture. Did I not have a better picture here? Very weird. Very strange. Very strange. Open image in a new tab. Let's see if I can have better luck. Yeah, there we go. So there you can see what I'm talking about. Even if you look at the rest of the Washington scene, you can get a very clear perspective of how this is operating, of what the energy is. It's a very powerful grid of energy, and you can see the different lines of energy converging on this point, almost as if you've dropped a pebble in a pond of water, and all of the waves are converging in that central dropping point. And it's like a powerful energetic bridge, if you will. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely something to be understood by this. Pope on Dope, has your screen crashed? Wow, that's an interesting grid you got going there. So there's definitely a lot going on here. Let's try and get that to work. There we go. There's definitely an interesting presence of energy that's being utilized by those that are in a position of power, if we can use such a term. And they definitely are making things, you know, operate in the fashion that gives them that sense of clarity, of control over the dynamics and the situation energetically. And it seems to me that we're all aware of it. We can all see the way these things are operating. And it has a lot to do with these polarities of magnetic and electrical force. And we're going to get into exactly why this is important, because it's got to do with the sun's energy. It's got to do with the way that it affects our hormonal centers. If you've been to Avebury, if you've been to any set of stone circles or a sacred grove, which is historic in any way, you will have felt the energy. And here I'm going to give you guys a little bit of what I've noticed. And tell me, Cosmic, does this align with you? When you go to a place where there's a high vibration of energy, the first thing you'll feel it is in here, this point in your palms. Here. Here. And the same palms of your feet. And you might feel it like this in the center of your head. There's like a kind of a tingling, a tickling, or even a sense of pressure or resonance. And you might start to hear a very, very high pitch. I'm not talking about, there's different pitches. There's one pitch that you hear which has got to do with electromagnetism of technology. I'm talking about an extremely high pitch that's not the same frequency as the one that you hear from electrical equipment. Have you experienced this, Cosmic?
You know, I don't believe I have actually. It's
Something
interesting
to concentrate on.
Yeah.
If you take your feet off and walk in the forest, for example, dowsing. Dowsing works by aligning yourself with the electromagnetic field of the earth. And because of the polarity shifts of these energies, your sticks will move in your hand, but you can feel it in your hands and your feet. If you take off your shoes and walk barefoot over the ground, you can douse with your feet by feeling the difference of the frequency under your feet. And there's like a different kind of a tone. And the tone shifts as you move there, and the tone shifts a bit as you move further. And suddenly there's this like giddy feeling in your feet, and you know that you're standing above water. So I think this has got a lot to do with water and the movement of deep underground rivers and aquifers and the water movement in relation to other principles in the earth. And so there's this powerful essence of water affecting our electromagnetic field. And it makes you wonder about baptism and why water is so important in magical rituals. What have the Fae told you about water, by the way?
Well, one thing I've been kind of thinking that's interesting about water is that pretty much every single organism on this planet needs water in order to survive. And if you think about, well, one thing that's always thought that's fascinating about water and its liquid form is that it's kind of it's a mirror, a speculum, a sort of reflective sort of surface. So because it has the ability to reflect and refract light, I think maybe in that sense, that's how it kind of holds information. Like it's kind of like water is kind of like a light. It's like a sponge that soaks up all the light and then turns that maybe into some kind of consciousness or whatever. I don't know, just spitballing.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's so on point. My theory of water is, well, I can't claim it's my theory because that is, sorry, give me 1 second. I was just messaging Indy. I would say it's something that I've come across and I've considered it as well and realized it. And then when I went to research it, I realized, dope. I'm not the only one. They've known this for a long time. Water seems to be okay, so you've got life force, you've got pranic force. And like you're talking about how life force and water are necessary. The force of life requires water in order to be expressed. And here's an interesting point. Even crystals need water to grow in. Something to consider. Even crystals, if we consider crystals to be living beings, they grow out of water. Something to think about. So water and life are so profoundly connected. I've considered like
Hold on, you're kind
the
of
pranic
breaking
field
up there.
slows down. Uh-oh. You can hear me now, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're not moving, but I can hear you.
Well, that's cool. Because maybe there's not you see. I'm not. So you can still hear consistently, brother.
Not really. You're breaking up a lot, kind of phasing in and out here and there.
Okay, I'm going to change my internet. So just give me a second while I. While I. Okay, so I'm back. You can see and hear me again, yeah?
Yeah, you're good.
Good. I had to switch internet, which is ridiculous because the fast connection is the one that's giving me the trouble. I'm going to have to write them an email and pay over the odds for this internet. So, yeah, so you've got life force, the principle of prana, and it slows down its rate of resonant frequencies and it becomes more dense. And it slows down that rate of frequencies and it becomes water. And there's different frequencies that it ranges to. I believe that gold is a much denser, slower form of the same principle of life force. If you want to look at them like as converging cycles on a graph, for example, water is one very close point to prana, as close to it as it can get. Further down the scale, gold is also very close to it. And so I think when you've got gold and water together, you get very interesting life force resonant frequencies, which is why people have used gold, gold for so long, to wear gold. Why gold has been so important, because it can regulate the flow of energy of life force, which is very interesting. Water is the actual carrier, the courier of the life force energy. So I've always thought of water as being life force when it slows down and starts to become gloopy. And it becomes so gloopy that it becomes substantial, like stuff. And the first grade of life force stuff is water. And then as you grade it and grade it and grade it, it ends up at gold. So that's like how I've always thought about water and life force as prana. Water is actual expression of pranic force. Welcome and hello. Let me not forget the crew. The crew is here. Mexico, lovely. You've been sharing. We've got Rob. Hello, Rob. Welcome. How you doing? Virginia. Oh, Virginia, Virgin. I like that. There'll be a lot to see in Virginia. Nightfall Noor. Hello and welcome. Do pentagram Freemasons map. DC, exactly. Yeah. The pentagram Freemason map is a big part of it. District of Columbia and Columbia. I mean, we look at Columbia. That's interesting. We've also got Canuck. Welcome, Canuck. I hope you're well. I hope you're thriving. I hope you're having an absolutely great day and week. What holds memory? Yeah, very good question. The memory is related to the water. So water is an expression of memory. I would say that life force is essentially what memory is. And that memory is held in water. And so the actual memory, which is life force, can exist within the water and be carried as a courier. Yeah, exactly. The consciousness of water. I think that water is the carrier of consciousness, and consciousness is attracted to water, and it bounces off and resonates upon the element of water. Exactly. Crystals, water, they're so connected. And water also loves light. You're completely right about that. Water loves movement. Prana represents the movement that pervasively permeates everything. So when water is in a state of motion and movement, it's basically cleaning itself. So water cleans itself when it moves. It's something quite powerful if you think about just the act of moving water cleans itself, prevents anaerobic growth and promotes aerobic growth in it, which is why the sea is so abundant with life. And why we need to bubble air through our water for our fish to breathe, because the stagnancy of the water becomes a bit of a problem. And exactly, like water can generate electricity. In fact, this is a very interesting point that you mentioned here. And much love to you, Canuck. Much love to all of you. It's lovely to have you guys here. I think that the water is something that hasn't been given enough focus. Wow. Those mountains are looking very inviting. Where are those mountains, by the way? I don't know if Pope and Dope.
It's funny you ask because it just stalled on me.
What were we looking at there, by the way?
It's
Some of the
very
shapes in
close
that mountain.
It's very close to the shorelines of Antarctica, between South Africa and Antarctica. So looks like a moon dotted island, moon-shaped dotted islands. I'll go back there now.
Antarctica is about what, 4,000 kilometers from South Africa? Is it that far or is it less?
We can have a look now.
I think it's less than 4,000. I think it's more like 2,000 or 3,000, isn't it? Not that far, kilometers. It's like maybe 2,000 miles. You know, less than 2,000 miles, which isn't that far. Considering the difference of climate from Cape Town, it's ridiculous. I wear shorts in winter and climb the mountain in the middle of winter, like before the sunrise. To give you an idea of what kind of climate we're rocking here, you can be up at like 6 in the morning wearing shorts. That's our winter, and that's during a particularly cold winter. I think that we're going to also be drawn towards the Arctic and the Antarctic. The story of Rupus Negro, we did dwell on Rupus Negro before, but it's one of those stories that's, you know, the axis mundi. As a metaphor, the axis mundi is the totem pole that the shaman erects and dances around. And it can be a metaphorical totem pole. It can be a pole. It can be something which is erected in astral space. It can be the point that you dance around when you dance. That's your axis mundi. And it represents the pole star. Now, the Taoists, their energetic alchemical work is all around the axis mundi, working with the pole star in order to channel the prana from the pole star into one's energy field and circulate it over into the microcosmic orbit. And when we take the macrocosmic orbit and link it with the microcosmic orbit, we end up creating very powerful currents of life force within our body, very stimulating and very energizing life force patterns. So this notion of connecting with the North Star and the Pole Star, the Big Dipper, as it's called, there's something quite powerful in this. And I think it relates to the energy generated. Like, for example, you could think of what we were looking at, that beautiful image of the White House, as being sort of a representation of the pole star on that continent. So like there's, you know, macrocosmic and microcosmic. Everything's a fractal. The universe is a series of fractals. And these fractals are reflecting themselves in a most perfect way. And so when we look at these pole star energetics, we start to recognize and realize that there's definitely some very powerful kind of energy. Wow, that looks like a crescent of a moon, doesn't it? Beautiful. I think there's definitely something to be recognized and realized, that when we align with a center, with a core, like that image I showed you as well before, when I was basically showing you the whatchamacallit, the Ida and the Pingala. And you'll notice once again there as well, it's very interesting the way everything seems to come back to a center. Everything seems to be fundamentally related to the center. You see the Shashumna there. The Shashumna is what this is all about. One wants to align the Ida and the Pingala energies. So the Ida energies are these points, and the Pingala energy are these points, and they are circulating. And here we have Visuddhi chakra, here we have Anahata chakra, here we have Manipura chakra. Here we have Svadhisthana chakra. And here we have Muladhara chakra. And there's the Sahasrara chakra, the crown chakra. And you see all of these chakras are on what we call the Sushumna. And the Sushumna Nadi is the Nadi of peace, the Shanti, the Shanti Nadi, between the extremes of these two polarities. And notice how these polarities switch from hot to cold, cold to hot, hot to cold, cold to hot, which is quite interesting, because what we're looking at here, and by cold, we're talking about matter being crystallized. And by hot, we're talking about the principle of energy being liberated. And so they speak of Pingala as being the life-giving principle. They speak of Ida as being that which takes the life from us, which is rather interesting. But when we get to the point of the Sahasrara chakra, you'll notice that the Sahasrara chakra is a reflection of the Muladhara chakra, where the polarity of both of these two are, notice they're in the same direction. In other words, the polarity of the Pingala entry point is the same as the Pingala entry point into Sahasrara chakra, and the Sushumna exit point is the same point here. And so there's something quite interesting being told to us by this period, by this series of fluctuations, which is also where we get the concept of the caduceus, which is another one of those very ancient symbols that's rather fundamental to understanding the alchemy of being. And so we can see that the maguses that run this world are using macrocosmic alchemy. What do you think about the macrocosmic alchemy of architecture? Have your Fae friends told you much about it, dear Cosmic?
Yeah, that not really, but that is something interesting to kind of consider, the idea of like taking those sort of like magical shapes and putting them at a macro sort of scale.
I think maybe his internet's crunched out for a few moments. Yeah, there's definitely this scale of energy that's being reflected here towards us, and I do think that it's rather fundamentally important that we can understand that there is a principle moving in this world, and the principle seems to be reflecting to us some kind of a energetic state of flux that can be manipulated magically. And we are all sort of riding this proverbial wave of magical flux within ourselves. And this is that manifestational potential that we all have. And the manifestational potential moves between these polarities of the Ida and the Pingala, as we can see here. And this Ida and the Pingala is I mean, you can't get a better image for understanding it. You know, these manifestational points. You'll notice the Pingala on the same axis as the bottom and the top. This is why we speak of this as being Pingala. And the Ida, because it's on the bottom and the top here, this is why we speak of this being Ida. And so we're talking about the pituitary gland here, essentially. And the pituitary gland runs this, which is our feelings and our emotions and our desires and our passions. And here we've got the thoughts, the intentions, the plans, and the concepts that link us to the energy. And so the energy needs the concepts, the impulsive thoughts, and the rational plans in order to come into being and to manifest. And these concepts need to be filled with the emotion and driven by the passion. It's to be embodied by the desire in order for them to actually become magnetic and start to affect manifestational change in the world. So using these two principles and these currents to generate the Sushumna current, which is that resonant field that can become stronger and stronger and stronger as we centralize the energies, can bring us to a very deep point of contemplation. And as we become deeper ingrained into the point of contemplation, our consciousness energetic field expands. And the greater the expansion of the energetic field, the further reaching are its potentials, the more it touches. And the more of reality it touches, the greater the possibility for us to expand into a possibility of dream time that we wish to attract towards ourselves, so that we can manifest the ideal potentials that we have contemplated, considered, built into a thought form, charged with mental impetus, intention, and allowed our passions to drive our desires, binding our emotions into the superstructure of a concept that is hyper emotional in its energetic state. And so it's resonating with depth and power and energy, so that it pushes towards the sphere of manifestation in such a fashion that it actually brings us closer to bringing that out from reality. Because I think of reality as, and this is very close to what you've been, when you speak about your Zarfexes and your Zarfexology, I see these as potentials, zones of potential. And these zones of potential are within, around the structure of being. And we're experiencing one small little aspect of all of these potentials right now. But we can open that valve. We can get the bridge operating. And when we open the valve and get the bridge operating, we start to channel more of the potential from superstructure of reality into the reality we're living in. How's that for an idea to explain manifestation, Cosmic, from your perspective?
Well, manifestation, in my perspective, is it's creating circuits, essentially. You're creating a sort of a dimensional circuit from where your desire exists in sort of magical space, and then trying to basically bring that bridge as small as possible, so that the manifestation has the highest likelihood of making itself come to be. So the idea is that let me do a little bit of a screen share here, because I think that wait, where is the freaking present share screen?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like you're pulling it through, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're pulling through the potential from somewhere else on this bridge.
Yeah,
Through
exactly.
the consciousness field. And you're sort of opening up the valve and the channel, so that you can like magnetically resonate that consciousness towards yourself. And then the surrounding will just reflect it like water. And I think this is something that people haven't really, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about these very easy manifestational systems that have taken the world by storm, right? And, oh, there we go.
Here we go. So, yeah, so this is kind of like how I understand things. So each of these circles, for the people who are sort of like new to this, who haven't really seen my stuff before, each of these circles represents a sort of an infinite dimensional, three-dimensional plane. And this is kind of where the individual soul or the self exists. This is the Iserfax. The left side, this is the physical world, and the right side is the astral world, which is called the astral, is called the indeterminate zone, and the physical is known as the Zarfex interior. So the idea with manifestation is that you want to get your idea, it starts out in this space, and you want to bring it into this space. So the way it works is, first you have the energy, which is the gate Zarfax on the very far right, which then charges the key Zarfax in the third section here, which is sort of the actual intent, the magical perspective or whatever. And the idea is that you want to get it through all the way to this Zarfax over here. So to explain what this is, so basically this is kind of the area that's the gateway to the outer Zarfexes, and this is sort of like these are different levels of the dream world. So this first one right here, this is basically an exact total replica mirror image of the physical world, like basically kind of like, you know, when you astrally project and you're in the same house and you're observing things. Then you have the first sector of the dream world, which is kind of like a direct reflection of fiction and stories or nonsensical dreams. And so the idea is, when you're getting the stronger your intention, the stronger your magic, the further you can push into these Zerfaxes to manifest your intent into physical reality. And this Zerfax right here, known as the Vlid Zerfax, this is sort of like a filter for its reality. If something doesn't quite fit in, this is it's kind of like a magnet that captures all sort of the nonsensical dreams or things that don't necessarily correspond with mundane reality, and it kind of like filters them out and puts them back into here. So the idea is you want your magical intent to sort of be powerful enough to override this Zerfax so that it can then go through here and then reflect itself into the physical world on this side. So that's kind of the idea, is that it's like you have your intention over here, and your desired manifestation is you want to bring it over here. And the idea is you want to make this gap as small as possible to get the greatest possible manifestation. So that's basically how I would describe magic working in my system, or at least the general theory behind it.
I'm seeing something very interesting there. Could you bring that image up again?
Oh, sure.
Because what I'm noticing is, and I think this is quite relevant, it's got to do with the building design and the architecture. If you see the way a stupa is designed, a stupa is designed upon a square base, like a quad. And on top of the quad, there's a kind of a cup, a crescent that holds it. And on top of that crescent, there's like a tetrahedron structure. And on top of that tetrahedron structure, there's a sphere. And on top of that tetrahedron sphere structure, there's a teardrop, an oval. Now, I see you've got these ovals here on the left as being representative of the energetic sphere, which I think is quite apt. The Akasha is represented by an oval in Vedic cosmology because there's something, it's that, if you look at the flower of life, yeah, there's that oval between all the spheres where they connect. What is it called? The viscous...
Viscous Pisces? Vesica Pisces?
I think it's called... Yes, exactly. And exactly, this is where this cup, this teardrop, which is why water, once again, we get to water. When water's going to fall, it becomes that teardrop, becomes that oval. It has to, because it's reflecting these sacred geometric principles. And it's the way in which water moves. It moves in the form of an oval until it finds rest. And then it settles, which is rather interesting. Normally it's like a round, flat thing when it settles. But I'm looking at these 7 spheres, and so you're showing me that your first sphere is your intention. Your second sphere is maybe the mental structures through which the intention moves, and your third sphere is actually the manifestational gate. Is that correct?
It's something along the lines of that, but the idea is that it's a kind of that's sort of the gate and the key to sort of a masculine and sort of feminine idea. So the thing about Zerfaxes is that there'll be sort of like, there's 4 like layers within a Zerfax. And so you have there's like an atmospheric layer, which kind of represents like maybe the outer membrane of the Zerfax would be something like a blue sky. And then the center would be maybe like a specific object in which it's in. So the idea is, in order to truly create a true like Zerfax, it has to exist within your intention has to exist within a certain type of space. See down here in the ETH Zerfax channel, these are Zerfaxes that don't exist in any kind of space. They're just sort of floating around in a black void, and only when they come. So this is kind of like where images, just standard images that aren't connected to anything, this is the space they exist in the lower part of the dream world. And then they kind of take on a more like an actual 3D landscape. in this upper Zaphras channel. And then, so I forgot where exactly, I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah. So the idea, I haven't exactly figured out like how manifestation works, because a lot of the system, more so than not, is a kind of more about how to travel to the spaces outside of the Zarfex. Like that's kind of like what I've been interested in. But I think there might be some relevance to the topic here, because the idea with so taking this idea, this is right here, this is the edge of our Zarfex, and then on the other side of this would be another Zarfex indeterminate zone, and the idea would be like this. It's like we have it's like this kind of acts as a bridge between the Zarfexes, and this Zarfex you use to kind of like what's the kind of bootstrap
structures,
sort of like you sort of slingshot your way to the other side. But the idea is that you take some like a physical environment and you try to make it so that it fits with the corresponding Zarfex. So the idea, so let's take for example the Zarfex that the Fae are from. In their world, the it's sort of like it's kind of like a forest kind of like field, but the idea is in that world. Actually, let me get another picture here just to kind of get an idea. So the Fae realm looks something like this, with this kind of color scheme, right? You have this sort of the yellow sky, and you have this purplish magenta trees and grass. So the idea would be is that you get into a meditative state, and you take whatever kind of atmosphere, whatever place you're at, whatever location, whether it be a forest, and in your mind's eye, you switch it to the color scheme of the corresponding Zarfex that you wish to travel to, and then you use that as a kind of an in-between space to sort of transition to the Zarfex of your choice. So that's kind of what that means. This is what's known as the Kli Zarfex. It's the third level key Zarfex. I actually have a diagram here on the left side. These are all the where I have key Zarfexes and gate Zarfex correspondence. So the lowest level, Biv, this is basically like you're basically the progenitor. Think of it as like sort of like the sperm seed that'll eventually become a true Zarfex up here, which is Zith, is like basically the key Zarfex for an entire Zarfex nucleus. So you start here, and basically like a fictional world, like something you create a particular like fictional universe, maybe be like Star Wars, maybe be Lord of the Rings. It's a kind of a self-contained sort of world, and because of that, it's surrounded by this black void gate Zarfex correspondent, which then isolates that. So basically, the idea is that these fictional worlds don't necessarily overlap; they exist within their own kind of universe. Then, when you get into Zhizh, you're basically taking that same story, but now the borders of that fictional world become blurrier, and then they sort of reflect into the outer dream world. So now it's not so much like, so think of it like this. If you take a fictional world like Lord of the Rings, and imagine like the map of the world of the Lord of the Rings, and outside of that map is just a black void. With Zhizh is what you're taking that, and now that becomes interconnected with all of the other Biv Zarfexes, so to speak, and because it has the Yo, which is sort of the colored gate Zarfex, now it's almost like it's like an atmosphere, so it can link to other, key Zarfexes with the same color. And then you get up to here at Kled, there's more of a direct reflection with not only just this is where you have knowledge of the other Zarfex. So see, with this, it's kind of like you're sort of, you're shooting into the outer voids randomly, just kind of like finding something by just sort of experimenting. But then when you have something established, you have a name, you know exactly what the place looked like, then it becomes the Kli Zarfex, which is then accompanied by Re, which is the white gate Zarfex. And with Re, it's sort of like, it's kind of like the opposite where it's, all closed up. The white kind of keeps all sorts of thoughts and ideas interconnected. So everything is super close together. And then Zith is sort of like the final full like manifestation of idea where it just becomes like totally indispensable with sort of like the Zarfex and ultimate reality, so to speak.
Yeah, if you could bring us back to the picture on the right. I like the way that brings the octagon into focus, and the number 7, the 4 aspects, the 16 grid that you've got there. It makes me think of I've just got the numbers running through my brain, but I'm looking at this now, and you mentioned on the right hand side, which is what's really getting to me, is the third one is like a valve that can open and close, right? Like
The green,
what word
the
did you
green
use
one,
to
mean?
describe it?
Are you talking about the green area?
No, I'm talking about when you started talking about this originally. That one, yeah,
Yeah,
the
right,
one that
right
looks
here.
like a champagne glass.
This one?
The third from the that line. This one, the third from the right. It says L2 down.
Oh, L2. This is what's known as Vlinid. This is the Vlinid Zerfax. And this is sort of a Zerfax of chaos, disorder. It's also related to humor as well, and spontaneousness, randomness. And the idea is that because we live in a solid Zerfax, I mean, there's a kind of blindness that comes from the black void. And that blindness then kind of generates random sort of like events and dreams. So if you ever have a dream where it just like makes no sense at all, it just seems kind of like, what the heck was that? That's going to exist in this Zerfax right here.
No, that's very interesting.
But what's interesting,
you used the word earlier.
What?
Can you remember?
Which word?
It sounded like the word valve. It was a different word.
Valve?
Like it contains. It regulates the flow.
Yeah, it's basically like a filter, essentially.
Filter.
Like it's like this. You can almost think of this as like a funnel, and this sort of like there's like a tail here, because it's supposed to be kind of like it's chaotic because you have this perfectly kind of this triangle, but you also have this sort of irregular sort of tail, and it's a kind of a contradiction. But the idea is that, this needs to exist because it's like without this thing to regulate, then it sucks up sort of the chaotic elements of the Zarfex so that this doesn't become corrupted and polluted and, falls into complete and total chaos and madness. So that's why that exists. What's interesting about this thing is that some of these Zerfaxes, depending on certain states, they change. So sometimes, when you're in a lucid dream, this Zerfax changes to this one, Biv, which is you're also the fictional world, but this is also the lucid dream Zerfax. And so the idea of a Vlid Zerfax is it's a dream where you're not aware you are dreaming. You still think you're awake. So the idea is the second you realize you're in a Vlid Zerfax, you're not really in a Vlid Zerfax anymore, if that makes any sense. It also corresponds to certain substances like datura and belladonna, deliriants. I believe that it also, when you use that kind of toxic substance, it takes you into this Zerfax, but that's when you're still awake. So when you're awake and you enter the indeterminate zone, this Zarfex interior kind of still corresponds with it. But when you go within it, when you dream and your body's paralyzed, this area basically becomes blanked out, and you can kind of do whatever you want within here. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you brought that word back, filter. So I'll run you through these 7 Zerfaxes, and I'll tell you how I see the chakras as being the points in the body that touch these Zerfax potentials.
All
so
right.
the Sasra chakra is a point of interface where you switch to leave this physical reality to go into the next reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crown chakra. That's what it means, Sasra chakra. The next chakra relates to the informative world that gives the structure potentials of connections that this world can be connected through. The next one is the Akasha. The Akashic field is that chaotic principle that is also a filter. In fact, the Visuddhi chakra is a filter. In Kabbalistic law, they speak about the duat as being what filters the energy so that you don't get overwhelmed by too much at once. So when you're doing energy work, your Visuddhi chakra will only open to as much as you can handle, because when you go beyond that point, there's too much chaotic potential that can overwhelm you. And so that point actually pulls into it the chaotic impulses that are beyond your potential to understand, which is very interesting to what you're saying. Then the one on the right-hand side of that relates to the connections between things. And the reason is that there's so many connections between things that it can seem like chaos to our perspective, because everything's so interconnected. And the next point is the gate, where you actually go to the what you call the next Zerfax, the next reality, the next life. You're leaving this all behind to go through the crown chakra. When you passing your flesh puppet and you're done, you do sastra activation, samadhi yoga, in order to prepare yourself to put the flesh puppet down and go into the next reality and leave this all behind. Samadhi, as they call it. So that Visuddhi chakra is also represented by an oval, which is interesting. And the color is traditionally black, and it's traditionally indigo or black as it's seen in that space. It contains all the potential information of the whole of the universe in that oval, which is why it's such a powerfully chaotic potential, because it's like you can reach into the future, the past, the present, through all different aspects by touching that energy. So that point is where all the psychic powers live, because it's where the chaotic principles are that can restructure the reality that we're in a very powerful way. So all the psychic talents live in your Visuddhi chakra, according to the Vedic school. And yeah, then the next one is the point that touches the heart, which is where the imagination gives structure to all of that chaotic input, right? And so that's your imagination potential, which is structuring the reality. So all the potentials of the structures are in the second Zerfax point, which is L3, and L2 is that filtering potential. Then L1 becomes the imagination when the structure is defined as specific potential structures that are being focused.
Yeah, it's where it becomes like a direct reflection of physical reality.
And now the Naught Zerfax is really important, because that becomes money. That is the point that is touching the two different spheres, touching the etheric and touching the astral. And
Which
so
one?
it's like a very...
this one? Or this
the
one?
one just before it, this one. It
This
says
one?
Naught on the top line. That one.
This one?
No, on the right.
Here?
If you look above, if you go L2 and you go to the left of L2, there's a 0. Is that a 0 or an O?
Here?
No. On the same line from the bottom.
Actually,
If we go, I'm looking at the Zerfax channel. Yeah.
Which one?
So if you go from the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in Z1?
No, if you start on the right, if you go to L4, right, where there's a musical note, and that's number 1. The next one, which is a crescent, is L3. Then L2 is the third one. Then L1 is the fourth one. Then the next one, where there's that like dark triangle.
Yeah. What about
that one is sort of that point in the body would be relating to Mani Pura. Mani meaning the gem, Pura meaning that's touching all things, all points. So it's sort of like where the contraction happens. What does that represent in your system?
That represents the self. That represents your individual being. This is essentially sort of like a map of your consciousness. And this is sort of the center of it all. And it shows that what's interesting about this Zerfax, this eye Zerfax, is it doesn't really exist in the physical or the astral. Essentially, it's like you basically exist
Both.
in both at the same time. So basically, this
Exactly
is kind of like the
what that
center.
is. Yeah.
But the idea is that you exist in two different Zerfaxes at once. You have one where you see physical reality, and you have your sort of mental, visual, daydreaming astral sense. So, for example, the A Zerfax represents sort of like it represents like cities, towns, man-made structures of worlds. So your physical Zerfax would be here. And then your second Zerfax, the knee Zerfax, which is if you're really in kind of a mental state, you're really intellectual to the point where you're kind of like detached from the physical world. So your second Zerfax would be here. Or it could be that your first Zerfax is here in the knee Zerfax, where you're just like, you're so in touch with your thoughts, you're literally dissociated from reality. And then your second one could be, well, really anywhere is the idea. But the idea is this always sort of stays like here unless you incarnate in another Zarfax. So it's kind of interesting in that sense. And it's also sort of like the idea is that it's not so much like it goes, if you think about how the progression works, it's not about left to right or right to left. It's more like it starts at the center and it kind of pushes both to the left and to the right, or kind of like both coming in at both sides.
So that's very interesting what you say there, because it's sort of it tallies up exactly with mani pura, meaning that which is touching all things, and that's the self. That's the seat of who you are. That's where your ego and your persona are coming into contact. Who I am, which makes perfect sense. And then the next one that you mentioned, which is the ZL1, yeah, which is on the left-hand side of that one. You mentioned earlier for manifestation that's the one you want to influence.
Yeah, because this is where the so let's say, because you want the thing to manifest an actual physical reality, and so that's where you usually you bring it from the dream world into the physical world. And the idea is you want this to, and we're talking about like ley lines earlier before. The idea is that
embody it.
Is that at a particular time, this particular Zerfax exists in a way that it creates a direct link to this Zerfax. So the idea is with the Shizerfax is that how this becomes one kind of like vertical oval. So a magical area, you would have a sort of a horizontal oval overlapping these three Zerfaxes right here, A, Zith, and of course I. And that way, so if you had, like, for example, a mystical site, a haunted house of some sort, the idea is that this is set up in such a way that there's no longer a gap between the physical world and the astral world. So it's kind of like an actual literal sort of bridge to the dream realm, if that makes any sense. A literal kind of like doorway. Because I was always fascinated in like fantasy books, particularly ones in dream worlds. Like I'm thinking of like H.P. Lovecraft's Dreamlands, where actually I have a picture of that. Actually, I have a picture of that map. Yeah, so this is a map of the dream realms of H.P. Lovecraft's world, and that the idea is you'd take a dream, you walk down a flight of steps, and you'd come out here in the Enchanted Wood. But the idea was that, like, the ghouls who lived in the underworld, they could basically crawl up the crypts and stuff, and they could actually enter the physical dream world. So I always found it interesting, the idea of entering the dream world through physical doorways instead of just, closing your eyes and going to sleep. And that there's kind of like, and that's kind of what I've been fascinated with by, is like sort of like finding where does the physical world and the astral world really intersect? And I think that this ley line thing you're talking about, I think corresponds to that.
Exactly. So getting back to what you were talking about, which is the L2, the ZLL2, which is the second last from the right on the same channel that we've been looking at. I've been looking at the second channel from the bottom up, 7 across, because from a Kabbalistic perspective, we work with the sphere of Yetzirah, which is the formative realm. And we're talking about formative structures here. So it's easiest to look at it in that sphere because you've got 4 different realms. The bottom one seems to correspond with Asiya, which is the actual physical structures of what gives us the earth element in reality, which is where you got those 2 void points on the 7 chakra point with the 3 principles manifesting in Malkut, which is what you see with the cross, the 3 principles becoming one to form that cross where the void meets physical reality, the Malkut, the body. But then the Yetzirah is the principle. Now, the tree of life, there's a tree of life within each of the 4 fields. The Ishya, the Yetzirah, the Asiya, which would be the next field up. That's the Katha. I can't see the rest of it. Exactly. That's like more of a subtle body, emotional plane of existence, right? Or a more abstract.
So the way this works in the Zarfax interior is that the Fezarfax is up here. This represents like true, like actual hard physical reality. It's something that's like abstract. Exactly. We can't touch it. And the idea is that this Zerfax
is kind of like in the Kabbalah, by the way.
It's surrounded by a type of black void on its outer membrane, so that consciousness is unable to penetrate it, and it's reinforced by being reflected by this void Zerfax right here. And that's what makes reality solid. And then kind of growing, think of this as like the soil, and this green Zerfax is like the plant that grows out of it. So you have the Phi Zerfax, but then you have forms, organisms, life forms kind of growing up and forming the Kid Zerfax down here. So this is where you would have your organic stuff, your forests, your fields, mountains, et cetera, et cetera. But then when man starts to take shape and starts to build roads and buildings and houses and structures, then the Azerfax starts to form here. So this is more this is sort of like the idea of abstract forms, things that we imagine, things that we create, that we basically build and create structures. So when you create like Masonic lines and geometry, you bring these very basic like shapes, your circles and so on and so on. It creates by in this Zerfax, the Azerfax, is why it's represented as like a diamond right here. And then when you sort of like add language to it, you add abstractions to reality. You start to think of everything corresponding to certain words and numbers and data. You then take it to the Nezerfax down here. So it's like high density, low density down here. So this is kind of like the fast. And the other way to think of it too is like, think of this as kind of like, imagine that this cross like slowly kind of rotates like a gear or something like that, or like a twisting kind of like a wrench or something like that. And this
that picture
is
called the swastika.
Yeah, no, it's like here's a better analogy. Think of this as a fan, and this is the air that moves the fan. This is also the Zerfax that corresponds to linear time. And so there's a lot of other factors, and that's why with the and everything is a direct reflection in the indeterminate zone. So, I mean, I feel like we kind of covered a lot of this stuff in the podcast I was on with you. So I don't want to like bog people down too much.
Well, it's making perfect sense because I'm getting back to. Can you move this picture a little bit to the right so we can see those words? Yeah, exactly. So the pink channel on the right hand side, second from the bottom. Then when we get to the sixth sphere moving along, which has got that beautiful diagram that looks almost like 2 things facing each other like this, right? That picture. Then from a alchemical perspective, that would represent the cauldron. So witches use that as the cauldron.
Are you talking about
and
this?
That represent it's where you manifest things. That's why all witchcraft needs to use a cauldron to manifest. From Tai Chi or Qigong, for those of you that are Taoist monks or Taoist practitioners of alchemy, it represents the belly, where you churn your chi in order to manifest physical reality. And then obviously the seventh one after that is the reverberation of what is manifested, if that makes sense. These two become like a loop in sense. And that's the Muladhara chakra, which is where that is like once again perceived and taken up as a nutrition to form like a circle. All of these seven then form like a ring. And then these four rings that are, they're not really separate. They just seem separate in the way that we consider them, but they're all interconnections of each other, which is like 49 gates. Like in the occult cosmology, we speak about the 49 gates. And the 49 gates is a rather important piece of occult law. So here you've got the 49 gates. And you've got the Zerfaxes that relate to each of the spaces within the 49 gates, which is really interesting. So your system is like on point with Vedic and Kabbalistic cosmology. It's on point with the chakras. And I like the way, the way you describe certain of the ideas, because it really can give people an understanding of the chakras. If they understand that the chakras are touching onto something else. Cosmically, and there's a lot of ways of imagining what that is, because it is what it is, right? There's this fundamental substance, and I think that what you mentioned here is with this cauldron of being the manifestational tool, which is being filtered by the third point, the L2. So the L2 and the L2 work together in that sense. There's some kind of a connection between them. And there's also a connection with the L2 and the L1, because the imagination structures that. But it's bound by the one and structured by the other, if that makes sense. So when we look at these sacred geometric structures that they've put on ley lines and energies, this L2 is important for the ley lines, because it's where we actually connect with it, if that makes sense. On the that orange one, that symbol that looks like that.
Yeah.
And that's where we store our chi. That's where we store the energy in our physical bodies.
I would say for this system, I think the energy, we're talking about actual like physical like energy. I think it would be the kid Zerfax. This is more like, you know what, actually maybe there could be a sense of energy. Like this is really kind of like the Zerfax of, I'm in my head, I'm disconnected from reality, I'm in abstraction. So if you think about someone like an atheist materialist, for example, someone who's really skeptical, doesn't believe in anything supernatural, they spend a lot of their time living in this Zarfax channel. Yeah. What's interesting too is that each one of these Zarfax channels, or Zerfax channels, represents a different belief system that you would be in. So if you're more of a Christian type or a Judeo-Christian type, you'd be spending a lot more time in this channel. If you're like a pagan occultist, you would be spending time in the Zaphras channel. If you're a chaos magician, you spend a lot more time in the Zerfax channel. And if you're kind of like a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Hermeticist, you would be spending a lot of time in the Kid Zerfax channel. And so each one of these channels, like there's the whole idea of the Zerfaxes, which are essentially kind of like the belief systems manifesting as universes within the Zarfax, and these are kind of the Zerfax channels that correspond with them. So, and then each one kind of has a different relationship with this Zerfax right here, this filtered Zerfax. So the idea with this thing is that there's a certain kind of like median level of randomness that this thing predicts. It's like I think of it like it's like 4 out of 8. So you think about so if you're a skeptical person in your life, this filter is going to be a lot more powerful. It's going to be, and you're going to have to use a lot more magical force to overcome that inertia. So the idea is there's a reflection, and your idea, and that this is sort of a random Zerfax. So there's like, so you think about a dice. Whatever, how many number of sides are on that dice, it's 100% random. But with the way Zarfaxes work and your understanding of Zerfax, that 100 gets multiplied into 200, gets multiplied into 300, and gets multiplied into 400% in this channel right here. So you have, so each 100% is one Zerfax that you have to overcome in order to manifest your intention into physical reality. So if you're like maybe an atheist, so instead of being like 400, it would be like 500 or 600%. So you have to overcome one or two additional Zerfaxes of skepticism in order to manifest your intent. Whereas you're someone who believes heavily in magic and you really believe in the supernatural, then your randomness ratio is maybe only 200 to 300%. So then you only need a couple Zerfaxes to manifest your intent. And so that also affects the, so the idea is that different belief systems create different energetic magical structures, ones that are more prone to magical manifestation and ones that are less prone to physical manifestation. So it's not just the energy of the space, it's also the energy of the human beings that inhabit it. So if you've got someone with a high randomness ratio, that's going to kind of dilute the magic of a certain area or a certain event or a certain manifestation. Whereas if they're intense believers and they really believe in magic, then it's going to like increase the odds. So there's actually kind of like a way to sort of measure magic and energy and intent via Zerfaxes, and using the number of Zerfaxes to manifest to understand the strength and weakness of a general like magical intent or a magical place.
I like that, you know, the potentials. And it brings us to an interesting point. Mexico mentioned earlier about how certain areas she sees portals. Now, Mexico is very sensitive to energies, and these portals, I would say that the portals that we're seeing in these areas are the portals within us. Well, the portals within us are the portals within the world. But certain spaces inspire the portals within us because those spaces are portal points. And so we can open up the consciousness portal within ourselves in those portal points more easily. And so we become aware of the portals manifestationally in the world, for the world is the portal through which consciousness brings us into being, if that makes sense, through this principle of these 49 principles that cohere to form a singular structure. Because actually, I don't think these 49 things exist. I think they're just different layers for us to understand different aspects of the same thing. I mean, I think we get to a point where all of these are just one thing, but they're so complexly woven together that in order for us to consider them, we need to separate them in our minds, if that makes sense, because we need to separate this Zerfax from that. But actually, it's all just at once. It's just a big, it's a chaos.
That's the whole concept of the Zarfax, is that all of these Zerfaxes collectively work as a singular Zarfax. So each one of these are like, if you think of a Zarfax as like this whole thing, this whole structure is basically kind of like your sort of Zarfax landscape. And the idea is there's actually like an infinite number of planes of these. But anyway, the idea is like, it's like the Zerfaxes are the atoms or the cells of the Zarfax. So yeah, there is that, it's that paradoxical, there's a distinction, but it's also part of a greater whole.
Yeah, exactly. That, and I think that's represented in the top line of the top channel, sort of where everything's absolute, if that makes sense. Like it's absolutely what it is. It's not deviant. And so in the Kabbalah, we speak about absolute as being reality as it is, true reality. And then there's what we do with reality because of our emotional field. You mentioned the Buddhist field is the second channel. The compassion is how we regulate our emotions. So the emotional field needs to be regulated by compassion, and it's connected to the plant kingdom. the emotional field. And then the next field is the animal field, the animal, where our animal selves are, where that's where we're manifesting most of the time. Like you say, the chaos magician and the Christians, that's your box of thought box for the idea. But it's where a lot of us spend our time, fluctuating between that. And then obviously there's some people that are like stuck in a very small box of reality, if I can use that term. Maybe it's not the right way to consider it, which is that lower channel, which is where like these things are just black and white, right? And mixed up, but clear in their mixed upness.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
So it's very interesting how this represents this idea, and it all comes back to that egg, and what came first, the chicken or the egg. And it's like, why when we contemplate, we do this with our fingers, right?
Yeah.
Some people say it's supposed to be round. No. You see, you're making an eye, literally. See? So you can make yourself a set of scrying glasses by channeling energy through these nadi points, and use them to create a screen through which you can look of energy that will change what you see when you look. So, and so you can make yourself glasses to see the energy patterns around yourself. And it's quite funky, actually. It looks like a Star Wars set of glasses, doesn't it? Like, the force is strong in this one.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but the force is in my head because my little boy was going wild with his lightsabers up until before the show. It's his birthday today, so he had a little bit of a celebration, and lightsabers captivated his heart. I got him Anna sabers. They're like little sparring lightsabers. They're quite funky little things. But and Mexico pointed out to me, like, oh, nice present you got your son. Like, some part of me, I would have always wanted to have lightsabers as a kid, right? There's something quite mystical about the whole Star Wars idea. But I think, this idea of the Force, it's like I've been explaining to my son. It's like, I'm so glad I got him into Star Wars, because I'm able to explain so much to him through Star Wars. The Force that connects everything. That's what we're talking about when we're looking at these ley line energies. There is this force that's got the balance between the polarities of the expressive alkaline acidic principles of the positive and negative hydrogen ions that are represented by the other electrical and magnetic changes in the force, and that they have to be in a state of balance. Too much aerobic energy can lead to cancer. Too much anaerobic energy can lead to invasions into the body by other beings. So there's that balance. Things have got to pass from this world, and they've got to be created. If your body's just creating and creating and creating with not enough passing out, you'll have too much stuff being created at once. We can call that cancer. So things have got to be born, and they've got to pass out of the world. And there has to be this balance between birthing and unbirthing in order to create the polarity through which life can manifest beautifully. And I think water represents this powerfully. So what Mexico was saying earlier as well about certain places where she witnesses these energetic windows, energetic portals, are really important to recognize. And I think that a lot of the chakra points on the planet have been pinpointed, have been focused on these portals. So they've found the places where these portals get focused, and they've put their structures there to control the energy. And so now we're looking at the sacred structures that have been built to contain certain earth energies on certain points. Now, you mentioned that falls into is it L1 category?
For what? What did you say was for L1?
You were talking about the place where man is building structures.
Yeah, and the Azerfax channel, the red one.
Yes, exactly. It starts on the L1 is the cauldron where it's being structured, and then the next one is where it's being erected. Is that right?
It's kind of complicated. So basically, this is sort of your individual Azer facts, and this is sort of the collective Azer facts. So think of it like this: the Azer facts in your personal sphere represents all of the roads, buildings, all the places you can go to without needing a map. Is the idea. So places that, so if you have a particular store, a particular I don't know, whatever location that's familiar to you, that's in this survey. So, but when you think about, like, you hear, like, you look at the world. So basically, your understanding of the entire world, like looking at maps and looking at the Earth and looking at cities from other places. So your collective knowledge of that, even going into outer space, then represents the you Azer facts. And like with the you Neezer facts, so this is sort of like your intellectual knowledge. So these are all the things you know. And this is sort of represents all the things that you think other people know. So it's like the compendium of human knowledge sort of existing here in relation to what you think is right. And then this is sort of the collective Kidzer facts, which is sort of like so this is like your body and your local environment, and this kind of represents the entire ecosystem. And then they all converse into the Uzer facts, which is this sort of thing. Or the idea is that this then splits off into these when it goes in from this way. But so this Zerfax right here is actually a combination of all three of these Zerfax. So this is sort of like your theoretical universe. What is all the things that are with kind of your meta sense of reality. So when you think about what your mind can basically conceive of existing in physical reality, what is possible, and this, the Zarfex nucleus, is where everything intersects, all the belief systems, everyone's subjective experience, and this is basically where ultimate reality actually is. And this kind of determines, like, think of it, this is like a body, and this is Zarfex interior, and this is kind of like the mouth, or it's like the outer world. And if it doesn't correspond with this, it rejects it and spits it back out into the indeterminate zone. But if it does correspond with reality, it's like, oh, I'll take this in and let this become part of the universe. So in a lot of ways, it's like the Zarfex is like an organism that selects what works with it and what doesn't work with, in the same way you maybe you like sweet foods, or you don't like spicy foods, or you like spicy foods and you don't like sweet foods, and you kind of take in whatever one you want. And the idea is, I guess, with each Zarfex has different preferences, and hence why each different Zarfex becomes a different world, because it has different requirements, needs, or maybe be more flexible or less flexible. With this solid Zarfex, which is what this map represents, it's very difficult to get manifestations into this world. But if we then look at our the map of the world that exists outside of the Zarfexes, where is that thing? It is right here.
Oh, I see Mexico making connections here with the spine, which is really lovely, because Mexico's working with kinesiology. So obviously that's based upon the Taoist medical wheel of the body, and the meridian systems and the organs, which is quite interesting. Another thing, Mexico, coming back to the point that you said earlier about the gardens in Cape Town. For those of you that know Cape Town, right by the gardens, there's an ancient cathedral. Go figure. They put a cathedral right there. Of course, there's a huge portal space there. I like what Rob says. He prefers the term energetic space versus portal. I think they're both applicable, because it's definitely an energetic space. And the portal could just be sort of the transitioning phase of consciousness manifesting this energetic space. So, like, because that exists here but elsewhere. It's here but it's elsewhere. It's elsewhere but it's here. So that sort of transition, the bridge between the here and elsewhere, for this space of energy to be present, is considered as a metaphor, as a portal, even though one in this energetic space can translocate as well, like move one's consciousness more easily into the etheric or the astral field, because of that presence of that resonant energy makes it easier to disconnect from the chakra points in the body and actually release one's consciousness to be free. And the excessive life force potential can maintain the structures of the body and the consciousness in the body, so that it's waiting for one when one returns from one's voyage into the dreamscape of reality. So it's interesting. I see where Rob's coming from, because there's been so many airy fairy notations of portals that like the word portal has been given a bit of a bad rep in the past, because people are often speaking about portals and not really considering what it is, what it means. But I like the way Cosmic described it when he was describing the L1 as a receptacle, in a sense, of manifestation, and how the filter was being described as a cone. Was it a cone? Is that the word you used?
Yeah, like a funnel.
Like a funnel. Yes, a funnel, a cone. A cone is a funnel, isn't it? It's the same shape.
Yeah.
And so that funnel cone becomes the event horizon that brings into manifestation that shape like that, which is the L1. And so it's very interesting how this resonant frequencies move between these different polarities. But there's definitely been a lot of it's the same like with books on crystals. Like there's such a clear idea on the New Age bookshelf, which has filled a lot of people's thoughts with particular meanings. When they speak about portals, they're thinking of like just a thing that you step through to go somewhere else, which is not really what it is. Not that it can't be used for that. If one has the potential to channel enough energy, one can use that and send certain parts of one's consciousness through. And the more energy one can raise in the cone, that cone that we're talking about, that funnel, and raise the energy to the point that it fills the manifestational space with enough of the potential, one can move more of oneself through that funnel. I mean, in theory, one can move one's entire physical vehicle through that funnel, but I don't think in this yuga that's very possible or common. Not that it's not possible, but it's not so likely to happen. And I think that you were getting on an interesting point when you were talking about the possibilities of things being less possible to happen, less possible, more possible. I think this yuga we're in is a yuga where there's more inertia psychically and spiritually to prevent too much of that cone potential of raising that cone, as they talk about in Wicca, where you raise the cone of energy in order to fill your cauldron. And the bigger you raise your cone, the more potential you've got in your cauldron to manifest reality, which is a very interesting perspective, which is what we were sort of getting at with these two Zerfix points. The one that I say looks like a champagne glass, which is a funnel, and the other one that looks like that two hands coming together, in a bid to channel force and to manifest them together, like as the very idea of doing this with your hands represents something quite powerful. I wonder if these hieroglyphs, and I'm calling these hieroglyphs because they look like hieroglyphs to me, there's a lot of interesting, don't you find it funny that hieroglyph that you've drawn there looks like this? Cosmic.
I can't. Wait.
I don't think that's by accident.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff it's interesting when I originally channeled this language, I just put these symbols down and then I kind of backpedaled the meaning from them. So I didn't have an idea for oh, I want a symbol that represents this. I just drew these symbols. It's just when I really initially channeled this stuff, it was literally just the symbols. There was no meaning attached to them. All I had was like the symbol and the sound. That was then from there I started like slowly, like over the course of a year, try to figure out what each one of these symbols actually meant. And that was actually when I came up with the whole figured out the whole Zarfax concept. So I haven't even figured out Zarfaxes and Zarfex yet when I initially sort of channeled the alphabet, whatever. So
it's
so
very
really,
interesting.
It really just started with this, and I had no idea what any of these symbols meant, what their uses for, what their utility were. I just kind of like figured it out all on a study. Like the whole idea of like 4 gates and 4 keys, I was just like, oh, there just happens to be. It's like, oh, there's 4 gates, but then there's like, oh wait, there's also 4 keys, and like that's a weird, interesting coincidence. So it really just kind of like created itself. This whole like system right here. And like one thing like I never even did unintentionally, like one thing that really blew my mind was I realized that this symbol right here, Vith, is actually 4 of these symbols forming a circle to create this symbol. You know what I mean? Like, and I didn't, and when I channeled that, I didn't intend that. I didn't even think of that. It just happened to work that way. So weird.
So how many, am I right? You had 10 on the top, 8 in the middle, and 5 on the bottom. Is that correct?
23 Zarfaxes.
That's what I'm finding interesting. Because 23 Zarfaxes would have 22 relationships between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings us to the 22 parts of the Kabbalah. Because they are paths connecting things.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've got 22 paths, it must be connecting 23 things.
Yeah.
There's something quite interesting that you've stumbled upon here. Well, that's probably more likely if it's been sort of slipped to you on the sly. Like, there you go, Cosmic. Take a look at this.
Yeah.
With a little elemental giggle and a kick of the hips. I had elemental friends that spent a lot of time with me when I was young. And gosh, I needed to learn to keep quiet about them because I was like exercised so much. Let's speak about my little friends come to visit me at night. And when I was stuck and I couldn't move my body, and it's scary when you first having to learn to live with this paralysis thing, right? Because you can't move your body until you realize that you don't move your body, you move your mind. And you go like, oh, duh. It's not my body that moves, it's my mind that moves. So I'm trying to walk, but you can't walk because your body is like, your body has a particular way of doing things.
Well,
but
actually,
when you're not
what's
in your
interesting
body,
about when you go to sleep, your body actually literally becomes paralyzed. Like there's a certain part, there's a mechanism in the back of your neck that controls whether or not you're paralyzed. Because if you weren't, paralyzed, you'd walk around and basically sleepwalk when you're dreaming. I know that they've done this with cats, and there's a certain part of the back of their neck that they remove that when they go to sleep, they'll start walking around and moving around instead of just like sitting there. So there is an actual kind of like paralysis of the body that happens. That's kind of interesting.
that is very interesting. Wow. Mexico just mentioned something about the Cape Town Gardens where I am, and that there's a ginkgo tree there, a balabo tree. And I just had somebody talking to me. Now, keep the stray jackets at home. This is somebody I used to know. He's not in the physical world anymore, I realize. He was saying that's why I chopped down those trees. I knew somebody who many, many years ago, he dropped a whole lot of lysergic, right? The thalamide. I don't want to say the words too much here because I don't want to get like blocked from the AI system saying, oh, you're talking about those things that you put in your mouth and they make your brain go, wee. So the lysergic acid dithalamide 25 was under the tongue, and he obviously had like an abundance of this, and he was super integrated in his state of consciousness, looking at these portals and things, and he took a huge axe and he went into the gardens and he started chopping down trees. And when the fuzz arrived, the fuzz are the men with the little hats, firearms. They drive in cars with little blue flashing lights. We call them the fuzz. When the fuzz arrived, they couldn't get close to him because this guy's named Joachim. He's like a 6'2" bloke, built like an ox, wielding a double-handed axe, and eyes like saucers, chopping down these trees. And they had to wait for him to chop down the trees before they could actually apprehend him, because they couldn't go near him. He was like basically not having anyone disturb his work. He was chopping down trees. And he went through the gardens and he chopped down, I think, about 8 trees while the cops watched. And after he had chopped them down, they managed to like pin him down, because when he was finished, he threw the axe down and they went for him. And it took like 8 or 9 of them to pin him down because he was like wild, like animalistic wild. Anyway, in the end, the gardens management refused to press charges against him because he had chopped those trees down. They realized that those trees had disease.
Huh.
And by him chopping those trees down, he had stopped the disease from spreading, because the disease would have basically spread throughout all the trees. Interesting.
Yeah.
He was on a lot of the good old, the lysergic acid. So anyway, this is a classic guy. I mean, he's an artist. He used to paint. He used to make 3D art. He actually built a glass table, where he took a big chunk of wood and he carved it into a Harley-Davidson engine. Exactly. And he made a Harley-Davidson engine as a base for a glass table out of ironwood. How cool is that?
That's pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure Mexico will get that, because Mexico likes cars. I'm sure she likes, the idea of to scale exactly a Harley-Davidson engine of a bike, because he loved bikes. He had a Harley. So anyway, my point is, he was tuning in to the energy around the gardens. And it's interesting that the portals in the gardens, you speak about the gardens, Mexico. I have been in the gardens and I've heard the buzzing so loud that I'm looking for the bees. And I can't find the bees. Where are the bees? And searching everywhere for these bees that don't exist. And the more I listen to these buzzing, I realize it's not just buzzing, it's crackling. I start listening to the buzzing and the crackling, and I realize it's like the sound of electrical. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I listening to? And you get a bit scared, because you realize you're listening to the energetic substance of the universe, buzzing and crackling with potential. And when you're tuned into listening to it, you can channel it. And you're scared you're going to channel electricity through your hands. So you get a little bit wary, like, uh-oh, what if I accidentally bring that stuff through my body? Because I can see and feel all this energy. There are very powerful portals in the gardens. I've had some very powerful experiences there, spiritual experiences in those gardens. I used to go there a lot. I used to go there in the evenings as well. Used to go there, climb over the fence and spend time. If I was with friends in the gardens, we would go there in the evening and enjoy. It's such a powerful place near that cathedral. That cathedral is on a powerful ley line point of energy. So, and there's underground rivers flowing down from the mountain to the cathedral. And that's why there's such an abundance of life and why fauna thrives in those gardens. It was chosen not haphazardly as being the central park in Cape Town. If you ever come to Cape Town, you must go and take a look at the gardens. It's really amazing. Another thing you'll notice is how tame the wildlife is. Like, you sit down on the chair and the squirrels will climb all over you. And like, they'll literally like climb you like you're a jungle gym. All of them, like loads of them. And they'll come right up to you. And people feed the squirrels nuts and stuff because they're so extremely tame. But I think it's also got to do with the energy of this zone. Because the people come there and they suddenly become peaceful. And because you become peaceful in that area, the animals respond to you in type. And so people are not afraid of those creatures. Where normally if you offer a squirrel a nut, you're scared it might accidentally bite your finger. like a lot of people would be afraid of that. But there's certain places where you can overcome your fear. Like if you live in the jungles, there's certain points in the jungle where you want to go meditate. And I had a place where I used to meditate in a jungle where I lived, which was called Kudumbigala. And Kudumbigala looks like this. Like this is called the Kudumbi. So if I take my dreads, and you guys have probably seen, if you watched my show, I mean, my 108 lessons, I wear a Kudumbi on my head. And I've had a lot of people teasing me about my Kudumbi. So this is, Kudumbi is a word which is actually Sinhalese. And Kudumbigala is one of the oldest places in Sri Lanka, where there is a sacred mountain where there was like kind of almost man-made, like not quite a pyramid, an older version of pyramids, which is like spiral of rock formations where they used to have gold underneath these spiral gold rock formations that was taken out by the Tamil tigers when they took over that jungle. It's a huge jungle. It's about 200 kilometers across. It's just a wild jungle. And so I went to live in there, and nobody was there because the Tamil tigers had held that area for a long time. So there was a danger of Tamil tiger terrorists in that jungle, and there was poachers, people poaching elephants and stuff. So there was like, you had to be careful. You couldn't have a fire at night. You couldn't have a light at night because you could attract the poachers, and you hear them in the distance, 50 k's, 10, 20 k's away, shooting their elephant guns. And I'd find the elephant remains from like old poachers. But anyway, this Kudumbigala, I used to find that when I went to this Kudumbigala, it was a sacred space. And I used to be there, and there were other monks there. When I went to this area, there were suddenly all these monks around me, but they weren't physical. I was experiencing these beings, like I'd be meditating, and there'd be these monks around me. And I'd look and I'd see them walking past me, and I'd see them like busy doing their things, but they're not physical. It's like memories of ancient times when these monks were there, and I didn't know where I was. I'd just been drawn to this place, like, let's go that way in the jungle. Oh, look at this. It's a beautiful structure. It seems interesting. It didn't occur to me that it's the shape of a kudumbi on your head, which is what the original monks who had dreadlocks used to wind their dreadlocks up into a spiral on top of their head. And it affects the way in which your chakras channel energy through your Sastra chakra and your Ajna and your Visuddhi
I hate to interrupt you, but unfortunately, I do have to go right now. So, like, I have some business to take care of. But thank you, as always, for inviting me to your discussion table, as always. Thank you, Bush Whisperer, and thank you, chat, for listening and watching the podcast, essentially. So, I'm just gonna head out now and take it easy, man.
Well, much love to you, dear Cosmic. It's been an honor having you. Thank you for joining us. Big love, big peace, big respect.
All right. Take it easy, everybody.
Take it easy, and good luck with your business.
All right. See y'all later.
Om Shanti. So at the moment, it's just me. I hope you guys don't mind. I actually was saying in the beginning of this week that I might be canceling today. But then in the end, I felt that I could do it. So we were maybe not going to do the round table today, but in the end, we did it. So anyway, I'll get back to my little story I was telling about the Kudumbi. The Kudumbi is this spiral on top of the head that we create. And gosh, now I notice how bad the lighting is. Give me a moment. Oh, that's so much better. So much better. So this Kudumbi is a kind of a natural rock formation. And I noticed that there was underground river. And what drew me to that Kudumbi was energy. So I was, my hands and my feet, feeling the earth grid energy, looking for water. Because I don't douse with sticks, I douse with my hands and my feet on the earth. I just feel the frequencies. And I noticed on the top of this kudumbi, there was an upward welling spring, an endless spring of water. You can't imagine how beautiful it's to live there. Like it's the jungle, there's nobody. And that's the only source of water. So the elephants come there, the snakes come there, the anacondas, the wild boar, the monitors, the big lizards. Like we're talking 6 foot. You can't believe what it's like to see a fight between a wild boar and a 6-foot lizard. Scary as. So all the animals and those creatures with horns on their heads, I didn't even know what they were. I didn't know what half, and the leopards, and also all the creatures would come to this water source. And so the snakes would come past my cave, and I would lay there with my feet straight after my meditation, just listening to the sound of the birds. And the big snakes would migrate up over my legs and come down over my legs. And I'd watch the snakes, and the elephants would come up there, and they'd like look around the corner, down the edge towards me, to my cave. It was like a magical place. But the point is that upward welling water was the key to the resonant frequencies of the space. And this was why it was the second generation Aharit, which means the Aharit were the ones who were directly trained by Buddha. Now, the story is that Buddha dematerialized his body and rematerialized his body in Sri Lanka. He sat at Theravandarapuram, went into a deep meditation. His body dematerialized and rematerialized on the shores of Sri Lanka. On the other side, you can just see Sri Lanka. That's the story of how Buddha moved from India to Sri Lanka. Then he traveled through Sri Lanka. He went to Sri Pada. Sri Pada is Adam's Peak. Very interesting place. There's this phenomenon of light that happens up there. It's a serious climb. It's like a straight up. It's like the huge monolith. It's a massive monolith, a natural monolith. Once again, water, springs running through this monolith. You see, there's always water being drawn up, and water can move upwards. Now, this is very interesting. It's not just because of the pressure of the water under the ground. It's also got to do with how water can actually flow up. Water can sometimes flow up hills. So these springs with the water going up are talking about certain kind of earth grid energies and resonant frequencies and fields running through the earth that can create this magnetic potential for the water to move upwards in such a fashion. So Sri Pada was where he went. He put his footprint into a stone, and there's the footprint of the Buddha up on the top of Sri Pada. Sri Pada is a place that is sacred to the Muslim faith, sacred to the Christians, sacred to the Buddhas, and sacred to the Hindus. It's incredible. It's the only place I found which is a sacred site, sacred to all. So when you go there, there's Christian pilgrims, Muslim pilgrims, Hindu pilgrims, and Buddhist pilgrims. How cool is that? That's Sri Pada. It's called Adam's Peak because it's supposedly the peak. It's also a point on the Earth grid. This is getting interesting, where you can see both the pole star of the north and you can see the Southern Cross. So if you were to want to erect a place to launch spaceships and to receive spaceships for communication purposes, that would be the best place to have a base, because you'd be able to monitor both the northern and the southern skies, which is rather fascinating if you think about it. So, yeah, Sri Pada, and from Sri Pada, he moved around and he ended up going to the east coast of Sri Lanka, which is by a place called Pottuval. There's a place there called Pottuval. And from Pottuval into the jungles, it's about from Pottuval, you got to go to the smallest village, which is about 15, 18 kilometers. No, it's about 20, 25 kilometers. And then from there, you got to go deeper into the jungle, another 18 kilometers. So it's about 30, 38 kilometers or something from Pottuval, which is on the coast. And there's a place there called Aragam Bay, which is really good surf. And you got to keep going south. South and across to get to this place in the jungle. And so then the Buddha went there and he set up a jungle hermitage for his Aharit. He left there. And his Aharit started training other adepts in this place. And so I'd found myself just drawn in this big jungle, which is like 200 kilometers by 200 kilometers. It's a lot of kilometers of jungle. Somehow I'd been drawn to this. And I'd found it on my trail bike because I had bought a trail bike that I traveled through the jungles on to find the place to set up camp. And traveling around, I was just drawn to this place. And it's a very inhospitable jungle. I found a water source. I found this beautiful structure. I found these caves. I was like, wow. Turns out I was living in a cave that had been lived in by a highly famous enlightened monk. And it was a bit of a problem for the Theravadan Buddhists because this white guy just rocked up and started living in this cave. And it was like one of the most sacred caves. Nobody went into this cave. And I was living there. And I had a dog with me, which like is a big no-no. It was a female dog on top of it. The Theravadan Buddhist monks are not allowed to have female dogs near themselves in the wild. Male dogs are fine, but female dogs are not. I know it's a bit weird, but it gives you something to think about. Like, there's all this abstinence. Where does it lead to? How many cases of people messing with children have there been by religious fraternities and organizations? And if they're not messing with kids, dogs are the next on the menu, so to speak. So anyway, it created a whole lot of issues, which is what actually caused the Theravadan leader of the Eastern Province, which is there's 4 different leader monks. They're called the Nayakatera. And one of the Nayakatera, there's an Eastern Province, Western, Southern, and Northern Province monk. And these 4 sit together on like a table and they rule Buddhism in Sri Lanka because the Dalai Lama doesn't exist there. He's not allowed. He wasn't allowed in Sri Lanka when I was there because they considered him a fraud. And so I got a relationship with this guy. And built interesting. He came out there with a translator and he told me about the place where I am, that this Kudumbi is so sacred because of this. He shared a lot of knowledge with me and I was like, wow, interesting. So this is what really got me looking at the ley line energies, because spending my time in this jungles, I had somehow found one of the biggest chakra points in the whole of Sri Lanka, just randomly, you know. And it's where I lived for like more than a year. And in the jungles there, barefoot, it was amazing, beautiful place to live, like maybe about a year and a few months, maybe less than 1.5 years. And so I think that there are these portal spaces that our consciousness can see as portals, because I saw these portal energies there too myself. People who are mentally unstable, that's very interesting what Mexico mentions there. I think what we often relate to as mentally unstable are people that are highly sensitive to the Akashic energy field and they haven't learned how to ground their energies. And so they are mentally unstable because they are so super sensitive to spiritual vibrations and energies that they don't know how to equate them in the physical realm and be able to put them into context in the society within which we live. And so this is, I think, a very common thing. Like when I was young, I didn't know how to regulate my psychic energies. So I had to be exercised a lot. I would have been called mentally unstable if I wasn't a manifestation, if I wasn't manifesting stuff. They couldn't call me mentally unstable because they were too scared of me. So they called me bewitched and possessed, and that I had spiritual entities around me, which there were spiritual entities around me. So people were afraid of me when I lived as a child. They used to call me the devilskind, the devil's child, and I wasn't allowed to play with the other children. So I think had I not learned how to regulate my energies and how to keep my perceptions of what I see. You know, when you look at someone's face, you can see animals in their face. And if you look deeper, you can see other beings. And sometimes you can see pretty scary beings in people's faces, beings that they're connected to on the etheric astral realms that aren't physical. And you see a lot of people making documentaries about them and say these people look like lizards. And I think that like there are lizard beings that can like make a connection with a human being to the point where the human being is manifesting that lizardness through their genetics and through their actual bodies. I believe that our bodies shape and reshape and rechange according to the astral etheric entities that we're in tune with vibrationally. So getting back to this point of the ley lines, here in Cape Town, we've got a very powerful set of ley lines. Those ley lines connect with Newlands, above Newlands, which is where the university is. The University of Cape Town wasn't randomly placed. It was placed at a point of ley line rich in energy, which is there's a place called Rose Memorial. It was put there. So the ancient, when the people sent their children and their teenagers to study there, they realized it was a powerful place for thought. And we used to climb the mountains there a lot. And so I spent a lot of time in the mountains following the energy through my feet, because you take off your shoes and you walk in the wild, you feel the resonance beneath your feet. And the energy is running through your body and you feel the changes as you walk. And so you walk certain paths on the mountain and you find that there's certain paths you want to walk. And those paths are high energy spaces. Yeah, Mexico, you love snakes. Who? You love snakes. Let me tell you a story about this morning. Joshua and myself saw a snake in the road after we came down the mountain this morning. And I said to him, it's a good omen because it's his birthday. So I had to, it was a baby. It was like about that long. I had to pick it up and he got really scared. He got a fright because I picked it up and it sort of reacted a little bit because I just grabbed it and picked it up, and because I wanted to put it in the bushes because it was actually in the road. And because it was a small one, it was curled up in the on the side of the gutter, and it would go up and down the road, and a car would maybe hurt it. And it had eaten. You could see it had eaten. It had a lump inside it, so I had to pick it up and I put it into someone's garden. But those people didn't have a dog. I just can't bear the thought of a snake being under a car. And once they haven't eaten, they become more conscious. I don't know if you've kept snakes. Any of you have had snakes. When they eat, they become a bit thick. Once they've not eaten, they're cool. They're like compos mentis again. So they're very vulnerable when they're digesting food. Extremely vulnerable. So, yeah, just reacting to Mexico's comment there. But so I think that these ley line energies are quite profound, something to consider. And I'm going to actually load up a screenshot here where we can take a look at a particular image that I've got. There we go. So let's take a look at this. I think it's worth looking at. Full screen layout. So here you can see we've got an image of a map, and you've got the United States, you got Japan, you got Christchurch, and you've got New Zealand and Australia here. Christchurch is over here. Interesting where these points are. The Conception in Chile. We have here. What's that point on the USA? Is that Hawaii? American guys, you might be able to help me better. And then we've got this running through here, and you can see where it's running. It's a very interesting location where it's running through here. Kazakhstan's just north of this. You see we've got a point of confluence and energetic resonance here in what seems to be Central Africa. Now, if you want to consider it, where are the biggest things in Africa? This is where all the biggest things grow, right? And the equator, it's not by accident. So So you're going to find a lot of converging energies here with huge potentials for animals to grow bigger, plants, trees, baobab trees, such. You'll notice there's a powerful energy rim running past the southern tip of Africa. This is where I am, Cape Town here. So we're on this energetic focal point. Then you'll see there's this focal point here, Australia and Japan. Why Japan was important, a strategic point during the war. Why, it had to be part of the example. Chile, this interesting history in Chile. And when we look here, we're looking at the eastern seaboard of the USA. So it's fascinating when you look at like a very basic point here, showing you the main sort of currents, rivers, if we will, of the energetic system on Earth. It's not quite as simple as this. It's a lot more developed, but it does give us sort of a concept and an insight into what's what's going on an energetic level. So let me try and see if I can bring a new image, open image in a new tab. So we've got another image here as well, which I'm also going to show you, which I think is quite useful to look at, which gives us also an insight into the way in which the energetic resonant fields are running around our planet. And I think it's of use. I think it's very much of use to look at it. So here, let me make this full screen. It is full screen, great. Here we can see that we're looking at what seems to be, I'm on Linux, I can't just draw my fingers. Let me just make this bigger. There we go. Here you can see we've got different points of the resonant field here. The Giza, the point close to the southern tip of Africa. There's interesting points that we've heard here where this is with regards to whales and noises that have been discovered. Yeah, we've got an interesting point here. There's Mount Shastra, right, that we know very, very well. There's an interesting point in the Xi'an in the China. And here's Aries Rock. So here we have other frequencies running through the planet. And you can see how these are more fluid currents that are moving. So I think this gives you an insight. If you look at the two images that we've shown you here, you can see that they're both a similar representation, but they're showing you sort of the yang and the yin aspect of the force. I hope that makes sense to you in the way I'm explaining it. I'm probably not explaining it as well as I can. But there's definitely these currents running on the Earth, and the currents get smaller and smaller and smaller. When you go down to that small level, one will notice that there's definitely a period of like resonant frequencies that shift. Like my dogs, there's certain places where they like to be, and there's certain places where they don't like to be. And if you've got a dog in a garden, there's a place where they would like to lie down and a place where they won't like to lie down. But if they're sick, they're going to lie in a certain place. They're going to lie in a place that will make them feel more sick so that they can vomit. Basically, animals are really in tune with these energies. So they'll actually go and lie down in a place that will help them to bring out of their body that is that light is smack on Ganesha. What is this? Interesting. Oh, you're talking about the you're talking about, yeah, I completely get it. I can see it now. Smack on Ganesha. And Ganesha is a big part of my practice. And looking at Ganesha now, we're looking at the 5 gunas, the gunas, the principles that hold the structure together. Sort of, you can think of them as rules, and there's a set of polarities. And so you could think of them as 5, but they actually are 10 in the way that they can be perceived from 2 different perspectives, each one of them. And so we can understand the nature of the Kabbalah as related to the knowledge of Ganesha, which is why Ganesha broke off his tusk and became the scribe of the heavens. And the scribe of the heavens in India is Ganesha. But when you go to ancient Kim, it's Tahuti, which we call Thoth, who is the scribe. And so the knowledge, the sacred knowledge of how these things come together are in the field of Ganesha. Ganesha is definitely the field of knowledge that you would find all of this sacred knowledge of the geometry that we're talking about, and how the earth mysteries actually work, and what the nature is of these earth mystery expressions into the physical reality, and how we can actually come to terms with recognizing and realizing the way in which these energies are flowing through our bodies, because our bodies are like a map of the cosmos. And the cosmos is a macrocosmic expression of the consciousness that we are manifesting into our bodies right now, and our bodies are an expression of the physical form. And so when we think of the world, it might help if we think of it as a fractal. Our body is one fractal, the world is another fractal, and between our body and the world there's a potential. And this potential we can call the Akashic field. And this potential is the potential of change, and our potential to manifest within our bodies, through our bodies, a change in the physical world. This is the principle of magic, essentially what we're looking at. This is how we manifest anything in the world, be it something we're building using our intellectual currents and our hands, or whether we're using magical means. It all comes down to a very similar principle or set of principles that become a process and needs to be churned by the forces of cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. So the builders understand this. They use the cause and effect. They hold the chisel, the cause, and then they clap it with the effect of the hammer. And the hammer is the effect. And the cause is the chisel, which is chipping away at the rocks in order to make them smaller. And then they lift the cause of the rock and they place it with the effect of the right hand. So there's this powerful receiving and giving of energy that is happening through our bodies. And the same principles are happening in the physical world around us. So I'll try and catch up with you guys as well. Adam's Peak. There aren't standing stones at Adam's Peak specifically, but there are stones that are standing that have been erected, structures. There are structures that have been erected. And they used to build these like cones. They're like a pyramid, but they're cones. However, what has happened is a lot of the cones have been broken down in order to get the gold, because they used to bury an obscenely large amount of gold underneath these cones because of the resonant frequency of the gold. And you've seen a lot of that lizard stuff in OBS, also a very interesting place. Now, observatory is an interesting place. That's why there's an observatory there. It's called OBS Observatory because there's an observation tower for looking at the stars. And we don't put observatories just anywhere. We choose the location of our observatories very carefully. And it's not just the weather. It's also got to do with other conditions that make it an ideal spot from which to look. It's an observational point, in the same way that Adam's Peak, Shripada, is an observational point. And interestingly enough, when you go up to Shripada, on the top of Adam's Peak, there's this effect that happens with the light that creates like a weird kind of shimmering, which looks like the light is like doing this. And there's like all these little golden stars and shimmering of the light up there. You can actually see the etheric field when the conditions are correct, because the electromagnetic field of that huge mountain that you're on is so powerful that it actually affects the way light is resonating. It's a very interesting place. Anybody that travels to the Far East, I would say this about Sri Lanka. I fell in love with Sri Lanka. I didn't like the people because I found the women were being disrespected. And I can get offended by that. I've always been someone that likes to protect women. So those Sri Lankan guys, they wind me up a lot because they do bad things to women and they treat them badly. And so I had to intervene into a lot of situations with men being badly to women. And I'm the kind of guy who used to intervene a lot. I learned my lesson in London. OBS also has a pregnant woman in the shape of a mountain. Wow. That's very interesting. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Can't believe I missed that. Yeah, very interesting place, observatory. Those of you that haven't been to Cape Town, I would recommend coming to Cape Town if you ever come past Africa. It's a must-be place to come. It's also like one of the loveliest places. You can come and see me. I'm by the penguin sanctuary. We've got penguins here. They are really cool. But these ley line energies, getting back to the ley lines, how can you develop your sensitivity to be able to tune into these energies? If those of you that are interested, I would recommend this. I would recommend that you touch all the points, your chakra points, and you massage all the points in your hands. And you find there's like these tiny little points where your finger wants to go into what seems like a, and you press these points, and you'll feel that as you press these points, it causes like little reverberations through your body, like little nerve impulses. You can feel them if you relax your body. First, relax your body. Practice a relaxation. Sit down or lie down. Problem with lying down, don't do it on a bed. Do it on a hard surface with a blanket so you're not cold underneath you. And find the points within your head of tension and just be aware of them and move through your head. Move over your head. And then move down your neck and just scan for tension and just be aware of the tension and just dwell upon the tension for a few moments and move on. And then do it body part by body part. Your neck, after your neck, the left shoulder and the left part of the shoulder blade and the breast, left breast, and then the right, and then move it down your left arm after checking the whole shoulder again, and right down to your fingertips, and bring your attention back there, and you're lying down, relaxing, and you move to the point that you can feel your fingertips. And when your body becomes completely relaxed, you'll feel almost like a weightless feeling in your body. And as you practice this, you get better at it. And then you practice scanning down your back, down into your abdomen range, then scanning over the front of your body, down your chest and over your belly, and then go inside your body along your spine and feel the points of tension in your spine and scan it down until you get into your lower regions. You move through your sacral plexus and you scan your hips, you scan and you just keep scanning, moving down until you've done your entire torso. Then you bring your attention back to your head and just scan your head for tension, scan your arms for tension, right down to your fingers. And you'll find that you automatically relax the more you do it. And then you relax your entire torso and you'll find your torso will start to relax. Then your buttocks and your hips, and you'll focus on them very carefully. Move your attention down, scanning for the tension until you get right down to your knees. And then you'll focus on your knees. There'll be tension behind your knees, by the way. It's normally a point, a collection point for energies. And then down your calves and your ankles, standpoint, and your feet, right down to the point of your toes. And then you'll be aware of scanning through your head, your body parts. There's a group again. Your torso, your arms, your fingers, your torso, your legs as a whole structure. And when you're lying completely relaxed, and be aware of your fingertips and the tips of your toes. And just allow yourself to just be aware of the tips of your fingers and your toes. And there will come a point where you actually lose consciousness of your physical body. So this is when you can actually learn to start manipulating energies, and it's how you're going to learn to leave your body. But so you want to learn to relax your body like really deeply. Then you sit up in a very relaxed way and you start massaging these points. And when you're so super sensitive, you'll notice that when you've touched certain points, you'll feel reactions in your organs. You'll feel reactions, certain lines of your body. You'll start becoming aware that certain points cause messages to flow between. Yeah, exactly. It's an old Rosicrucian Rosicrucian exercise. That's how I was first taught when I was a child as well. But it works. yeah, the intention is truly magical. Cape Town is a fascinating place. It's there were wars fought over Cape Town because it's geopolitical as well. It's got a lot of interesting, comes to trade. It's an important point of trade. It's an important point for ships to get refueled as well. So there's a lot of history here, but and it's totally different to the rest of South Africa. It's very different to the whole of South Africa. You come to the Western Cape, there's one thing. You go to the rest of South Africa, it's like chalk and cheese, and it's where the San people were. The San people were based here in the Western Cape. So we've got the indigenous vibration here in the indigenous mixture of people, which is what they call the colored people, who are a mixture of all different kinds, but they've got the indigenous in them of this place, Cape Town specifically. And the indigenous burial grounds are not far from where I live here. If I go through Fishhook, between Fishhook and Kommetjie, there's and whales. The whales come here to mate. The whales come to mate on the other side of this piece of land that I'm on. The whales and the ochres and the killer whales and the dolphins swim past where I am quite frequently, but they mate on the other side in the Atlantic Ocean. It's so beautiful to go watch them mating. They come in huge pods of whales, and they pair up, and you see them blasting. So it's really special, spectacular place. But yeah, so you relax your body and you work these nervous points, and you stimulate these points, and you become more sensitive to the energy in your hands. And you do the same for your feet. And when you do this, you'll notice certain frequencies in your head, resonant frequencies, buzzing energies. You'll probably feel the side of your head. It feels like there's an axis running like this, and an axis running like this, like a cross, and an axis running like this. You'll feel 3 axes of energy running through your head. And in the center, you'll feel like there's this. And so now you're starting to activate your Ajna chakra, which will align the left and the right side of your brain and the front part and the back part of your brain to become in a state of harmony, so you can operate with whole brain thinking. But once you've sensitized your body in such a way, then you want to go barefoot, and you want to go and stand in your garden, and you want to feel the energy. And you just want to walk slowly across your garden until you feel this upwelling feeling, almost as if it's like in your sexual centers, like a kind of excitement. You suddenly feel this current of excitement. And that excitement will make your feet sort of resonate. You'll actually almost feel a buzzing in your feet. You might feel, actually, it feels like there's a knocking against your feet. Depends how open you are. And you'll feel this knocking in your feet reverberating against the palms of your hands. And so the energy will be pulsing through your body. And that's how you will find these points. I found a point in my garden. How's this? So I've got an anchor in my garden, a ship's anchor from an old Dutch ship, like a big ship anchor. And when I was scanning my body, my garden, I noticed there's this convergence. And when I looked at the way the energy is flowing through my property, I was like, wow, they put this anchor facing east on one of the power points in my property, which is on my path, right in front of my property. Mexico knows that spot well. It's where she likes to go and stand a lot. She stands very close to that place. She's drawn there. And it's a power point. It's the powerful convergence of energy on that point. And interestingly enough, if you stand on that point and you look towards the sunrise, you're looking along the line of that anchor. And I think the sunrise is like when we're in the spring equinox. So it's very, very interesting how, these ship captains put that anchor in the property exactly at that point. Because I wasn't thinking about the anchor. I was just feeling the flow of the energy. And then I followed it around. I sort of close my eyes and walk around and sort of, I do it when there's less light. I like to do it if the sun sets. During the sunset or during the sunrise. But I find during the sunset, I'm particularly sensitive to these energies. The sunrise, I like to stare at the sun. the sunset's a good time to really work with these vibrational fields. And so you can really feel the resonance very powerfully running through your body. And you can also look at the moon rising after you've tingled your spots on your hands and your feet. If you see the moon rising and you look at the moon will cause a hammering behind your forehead of energy. And that will open you up to the dream state. And you'll feel that dreamy sensation running through your consciousness. That's when you're ready to feel that energy under your feet. And so then you walk on the ground and you feel that sensation under your feet, and you allow your consciousness to settle into it. It's almost like your mind travels under your feet into the ground. It's like a weird kind of a feeling, but you start to feel there's like something underneath there pulling and pushing under the earth. And as you walk slowly in a meditative way, you start to tune into the different frequencies. And then after you've done that, you'll notice when you look at it, you go, oh, that's interesting. Because this point does have a certain kind of something happening with nature. You'll find that very interestingly. Certain points where there's energies flowing in different directions. And so Feng Shui will then put rocks and structures in such a way as to accentuate these energies and to bring more balance and harmony to the energetic field of your zone, which is rather interesting. Mexico is my beloved. So we're not quite neighbors. She's my muse. So yeah, Mexico is she's maybe Mexico and myself have known each other since we were kids. We've got a history. So yeah, it's very interesting when you start to tune into your energies. And another thing that you can do to increase your resonant sensitivity to these fields of resonance and vibration is to, when the sun is setting, to go and look at a tree and plants and allow yourself to take in the whole structure, and you'll start feeling the vibrations of the plants in your body, and you'll start seeing the luminosity that's like resonating. And you'll start seeing there's like stuff coming out of the plants. You start seeing the flowing with your eyes, your etheric eyes. You start noticing there's these little fields around all of the leaves, and these fields around the trees and the plants, and there's this like very busy activity. And then when you look inside those fields, there's like lots of little dots that are coming and going and coming and going really, really fast. And so you're actually looking into the pranic field. The prana is like a quantum entanglement field. You can actually see it with your physical eyes, because your physical eyes have got etheric organs of perception. My little dog is calling me. Henry, do you need to go out? Just let me let him out quickly. Bless him. The doggies are getting a little bit demanding. So yeah, it's been raining today. They haven't spent as much time outside as they usually do, and I left him in the lounge a lot today because I was very didn't spend as much time with them as I usually do. I normally spend time with them outside and let them play more, but it's just dreadfully rainy weather. So yeah, my beautiful Mexico. So this sensitivity, you can then move it into the visual spectrum. And when you move it into the visual spectrum, it will actually strengthen the proprioceptive sensitivity to the energy that you feel moving through their nodes, through your organs and your chakras in your body, as like vibrations. I feel them like vibrations. Mexico might feel them like warmth. It depends on your elemental attributions as to how you're going to resonate and feel them. And you might feel them as like warm currents flowing through your body. You might feel them as like a cool shivers running up your spine. I love you more than anything.
Katie's going tomorrow. Katie's coming tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. Yes, she's going to visit. High five.
But Ted is coming on at 2
I'm
o'clock.
busy doing a live, Josh.
We are-
Josh, is that a good night?
Yeah, that is a
Good night, my boy. I love you more than anything in the world. Sleep well, okay? Okay, your lightsabers are there and they're good. You sleep well, sweetheart. He's so cute. He insisted on leaving. Yeah, goosebumps. Exactly. Mexico. It's like a kind of a chill feeling that runs through your body. You can feel them like that. I sometimes feel the warmth. I sometimes feel that shiver that runs through the body. But I normally feel that it's like a vibrating, sometimes like even knocking. If you've got a strong earth element, you might feel it like that, like dot 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 dot, like a heartbeat running through your body, different points, different speeds of resonance and frequencies. And then if you listen to that, there's that, but there's also a faster, and then there's a very fast. And as you tune into the different fields, you'll see there's different fields of vibrations, like octaves fitting into each other, like a musical notation of sound running through your energy field. And you also want to practice seeing and feeling the energy. So you feel the energy between your hands and you see them. And as you practice this, you become more sensitive to feeling the energy moving through your hands. And Joshua had a lovely time. He said he was really happy. He loves that pirate's chest, by the way. Mexico brought him a huge pirate's chest. Oh my gosh. He's so excited about his chest. He's like, I've got a pirate chest now full of tools. And he loves tools. The way to Joshua's heart is with tools. Lightsabers he enjoys, but tools, he knows that they are adult toys. So he can do adult playing with tools. He's quite clever. But yeah, so these are simple ways of attuning one's energy to the earth grid energies and actually learning to channel these energies and become very, very physically sensitive to these energies and being able to use them to attune. Now, if you do all of these things that we've been talking about and become energetically sensitive and pick up a stick that's like a catapult, but a big one, and you turn it upside down and you hold the two ends of the stick and you walk carefully and slowly over the water, you will feel, over the land, you will feel, I've got to let that doggy in. You will literally feel a desire for it to move. It will move in your hands. And I suppose it's sort of like very much, it's like kinesiology, isn't it, Mexico? You know, the whole idea of dowsing, isn't it? It's like muscle testing. Think about it. You're muscle testing for water. Isn't that what it is? And so you can use these sticks, and because of the energy flowing through your body will react to the presence of water under the ground, because the polarities will change as you walk over the ground. And as you walk to a place where there's water, you'll feel that inversion of the polarity. We spoke about water being diamagnetic. And so you'll actually be able to feel the water. So you can make a living dowsing, by the way. Because when people drill holes in the ground to make a water well, it costs a fortune. It's really worth paying someone to douse first. Whether you believe it or not, it's worth paying someone to douse. Because, yeah, you can use a pendulum as well, can't you? Easily, you know, or you can just use the vibration knocking in your body. If you can learn to follow that vibration, then when that vibration changes, then it's the same like dowsing. You're just following the vibrational pendulum in your body. It's all the same thing, which is where the muscle testing, I think, comes from. This potential of magnetism in the body causes the body to react, which could be with a pendulum, could be with a dowsing rods, could be just feeling the energy reacting. So these are like simple ways to be able to engage with the earth energies. And why do you want to engage with the earth energies? Because how you have your home can be to maximize the positive earth energies. There might be certain parts of your home where you shouldn't hang out. Example, in places where you've got ants, you shouldn't hang out because the ants are tuned in to these frequencies and they thrive on these frequencies. They thrive on the presence of the field that represents and reflects the positive hydrogen ions that are actually anaerobic. And that anaerobic quality will make you more likely get sick and get viruses. So why do some people get viruses and they get sick? Maybe they've got their beds on an anaerobic zone in their home. And so anything gets into their body, it thrives because they get into their bed and they sleep in this place where this energy frequency is really not good. And that negative energy actually affects the way they sleep. And so they're never healthy. They could be eating their food in a place where there's a negative presence energetically. And the change can be 1 meter or 2 meters. Sleeping there or sleeping 2 meters away can have a different opposite effect. So when you become sensitive to these energies, you start knowing where you feel comfortable and where you don't feel comfortable. Exactly. I think, Mexico, you're on point here because it's so true. What we've been saying here, basically, the dowsing. I just want to catch up with where we were in the comments. But what you said was the negative energy in the mind will reflect. So they'll emotionally become the reflection of frequency that is in tune with the space where their bodies are, which is why we go to temples and sacred groves, because then your body gets in tune with the potential of the life force, the higher life force potential, which brings you to a state of what the Taoist alchemists would call harmony, the Tao. And in that state of the Tao or harmony, one is able to tune in and become in a state of balance. And the Yang Yin are operating in a positive alignment zone. So these are simple ways to be able to use the sensitivity of Earth grid energies in a practical way, where you have your food. I've noticed, for example, my kitchen isn't in the best place in my home. My kitchen's not in the best place for the energetics, just with that point is, which is interesting. And so Mexico might have noticed I like to store food in a place in the lounge. If I store food in a certain place in the lounge, the food stays fresh longer. Wow. So like people think like, what's this weird guy? Like he keeps his bag of vegetables there. It actually, there's an interesting point in the way these currents flow. There's an interesting point of current energy flowing through that particular channel at that part of the house. And my dogs like being on that side of the room. And that side of the room is the same place where my bed is. You see, just on the other side of the wall. And interestingly enough, and because it's a portal point, there was a being on my stairs that was a memory that was trapped in this zone of time that was an issue for the people who lived here before, and attracted certain kind of things. So I had to cleanse that particular zone to make it conducive. But where there are these points where there's this high potential, can be a high potential point where beings can be attracted to that point, which is interesting. So that's something else to consider, the spiritual hierarchy as it relates. There is an easy way to self-body test. It's how cells repel to poison and are drawn to good nourishment. Same principle. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's definitely important. Exactly. You can muscle test everything, you know. That's what pendulum dowsing has really been about, why a lot of people rely on their pendulums for dowsing in such a big way. So I think I've come to a point where I'm going to be ending this show in the next few minutes. I wanted to have a short show today because my dogs need my attention, and it's 7 minutes past 9 here. I need to let them out and spend a bit of time with them. I didn't actually let them out for long enough earlier before my show like I normally do, and let them run around. And it's not raining now. But it's been great. I hope you guys have enjoyed the show. A short and sweet one. It was my mistake. I did say to people earlier this week that I didn't think I was going to be doing the show this weekend. I'm not sure what happened to Indy, but I think possibly he had got that download from me and he had sort of made plans, which is totally fair and reasonable. But I'm sending you all so much love, peace, honor, respect. This is the shortest roundtable ever. And I hope I didn't bore the pants off of you. And if I did, should you be wearing pants? But I'm sending you so much love, blessings, peace, honor, and respect. Take it easy. Don't forget to smile. Life is short. And start tuning in to those earth frequencies, those earth energies, and start, seeing how you can change your physical life. Only a pleasure. Only a pleasure, dear Mehiko. Always a pleasure. And sending you all love. Namaste. Om Namah Shivaya. Shanti Dham. Jai Guru Deva Lakabam Shiva Shiva Shankar Shankar Bhagwan Namaha. Om Tat Sat. Jai Guru Deva Shanti Shanti Shanti. Have an absolutely great weekend and bye-bye.